What's going on, everybody? We are back with another episode of the Fantasy Football Busters podcast. We are recording this on Tuesday, August 16th, and I'm ready to kick this one off. I'm feeling good. My name's Eric. This is Will. Will, how you doing today, man?
Dog, I'm feeling great. And also, that was a great pun right there. We kicked this one off. That was a good one, man. I fuck with that.
Didn't even mean to, but I dig it. I'm with it. So we got another divisional episode for you guys today. We're starting off with the NFC East and NFC West. But first, we will get started with the news. We got a lot of injuries to go through today, unfortunately. But
Alrighty.
yeah, so let's start it off. We got Drake London sustaining a minor knee injury in the preseason opener. It seems like it's not going to linger for too long. They're saying he's only going to sit out of practice for like a week. And then we had the crazy news of Zach Wilson had that non-contact injury that looked like it could have been a torn ACL. It seems like he's avoided the worst. They're saying he suffered a bone bruise and a partial meniscus tear. We still don't have all the info yet, but initial reports are saying he could be back in 2 to 4 weeks. Um, we also have Browns center Nick Harris likely done for the year with a knee injury. Unfortunate for them. Their offensive line was looking good, but just another piece of bad news there.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah Mitchell dealing with a hamstring strain that will likely prevent him from playing in the preseason. They expect him to be ready for week one, but as we're getting pretty close to the season, these soft tissue injuries start to scare me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, soft tissue injuries definitely make me a little nervous, especially with the fact that like the 49ers run their offense in a way that runs through their running back position a lot. So Elijah Mitchell already had some sort of, I guess, longevity and injury concerns, and the fact that he's starting out the season like this isn't great. But
Right.
it all stands to be seen as well.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point. This, like specifically to him, he's already been dealing with a lot of injuries so far throughout his career. So fingers crossed, he's fine for the beginning of the season. But that is definitely something to monitor. More soft tissue injuries. Both Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson have undisclosed soft tissue injuries that they're dealing with right now. To this point, they had been splitting camp reps pretty evenly, but now they're both having to sit out. Darren Waller with kind of a confusing one, just because there hasn't really been any information. He's been sitting out of training camp, I think, the entire time, dealing with what they're calling an undisclosed injury.
I,
I'm worried about that one.
I believe Schefter actually said it was a hamstring injury, but they said
Oh,
they
did
don't.
he?
Yeah, they said they don't consider it to be serious. Yeah, August 12th, 12:47 p.m. has been held out of training camp due to a hamstring injury that is not considered serious per source.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you for the correction. I wonder, again, soft tissue injuries, this type of stuff, as we're creeping closer to the season, scare me. He's been sitting out, I think, all of training camp so far. So hopefully we get to see him back soon.
Yeah, hopefully him just sitting out is just precautionary, just a veteran move because they know he's already familiar with the system. He doesn't have to participate, but you would like to see him ramped up a lot more at this point in training camp. So, like you said, those soft tissue injuries can be super nagging, and hopefully it's nothing crazy going on, but
Yeah.
something to keep an eye on and monitor as well.
Yeah. And you said, he's a veteran, so he'll get up to speed quickly, but I don't know that he is necessarily familiar with the system since there's been a change in coaching
Oh,
staff.
that is very
Yeah.
true, actually. Yeah. Sorry.
So unfortunate to
100%
see. Now
right.
you're good. But yeah, just another one to monitor closely. Hopefully he gets back out here soon. Zach Ertz has been sidelined this past week with a calf injury. Doesn't sound too serious. Ravens wide receivers Tylan Wallace and James Prochet, both dealing with minor injuries. The Ravens seem to say that they're going to be back for week one. Um, so hopefully no issues there. But also, who knows whether these guys are really going to make a huge impact. The depth is needed, but yet to see whether they can be impact players. Um, Rashad Penny hampered by a slight groin issue. You hate to see that from him this early on.
Man is always hurt. It's so crazy, bro. It's like he constantly needs an IV or something because he's always hurt for some reason. But
Yeah,
like you said, you hate to see it because he really is a talented running back. But just health wise, has just been terrible for him so far.
yeah, it's really unfortunate. And then I believe the last piece of relevant injury news is that Russell Gage has also been dealing with an injury. Do you have like the specifics on what injury he's dealing with?
I remember that it happened at practice. It was actually
Yeah,
during the Buccaneers Dolphins joint practice. Um,
that's right. I do remember hearing that.
yeah, the other guy that he was involved in the hit with was actually carted off.
Oh
But
shit.
yeah, but I can't. I don't think I don't remember what it was actually. I can see if I can pull it up or find what I can.
That's all right. It's another one that, from what I've heard from the team, doesn't seem too serious. They're looking to get him back before the start of the season, so
It's a
hopefully it's not too big a deal.
tweaked hamstring.
Of course it is.
So it's a tweaked hamstring, and he's considered day to day. So they don't want to rush
Okay.
him back into it, but it's just literally that's I hate day to day injury announcements
Yeah.
because they can literally mean anything. It could mean
Right.
he's out for the week. It could mean he's out for 6 weeks. They're just literally monitoring it every day. Is all that means.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that wraps up all of the injury updates that we have. And then into non-injury news, we have James White retiring. He was dealing with that hip injury that he's had for quite some time now. Reports prior to him retiring were that he was seen at like a charity event and he was still limping around, and it's been months and months, since he sustained that injury. So probably in his best interest physically to do that. Good for him, but a great career coming to an end there.
Yeah, honestly, one of those more reliable fantasy options throughout most of his career, especially PPR, half PPR leagues. Uh, outside of that, it's just going to be sad to see him go just because he was as good of a player as he was. He was exciting to watch, but that also means stonks are up. Stonks are up on Ramondre Stevenson.
Very true.
He's definitely going to get on the
Yeah,
field a lot earlier than we anticipated now.
yeah, and that was the next piece of news. They're reporting out of camp that Ramondre Stevenson has been practicing in the James White role. I figured this would open up opportunities for him when it comes to passing work. We'll see if they still try to work in another passing back. I feel like that's typically a staple of the Patriots offense. With McDaniels gone, who knows? Maybe things are up in the air, but definitely potential there for Ramondre to walk into a good amount of passing work.
Yeah, so
Um,
it's just gonna it's gonna be interesting to keep an eye on that whole Damian Harris situation too, because they're saying he possibly is on the trade block as well. It may be one of those situations where they see if they're already ramping up Ramondre Stevenson like this, and they have that three down back potential, why not go for it? Or they can just keep the uh, two workhorse running backs and just do sort of a two headed monster coming out the backfield. So it's gonna be kind of exciting to see the Patriots running back situation now because it's gotten a lot less murky.
yeah, that's true. If I had to put my money on it, I don't think Damian Harris is going anywhere, and I feel like you would probably say the same.
Mm-hmm.
Those initial reports, like the source of where those trade rumors came from, I think was an Albert Breer tweet or article, and it was kind of taken out of context. He did mention that it's not impossible that they put him on the trade block, but I think that was in bigger conversation where he was just saying that they like how Ramondre's been playing. Um, I don't think he was necessarily saying that that's likely going to happen. So
Okay.
just something to keep in mind when taking in this kind of information.
Very
Always got to
true.
be skeptical.
Very, very true.
Um, Next piece of news: Melvin Gordon is back at practice after dealing with a foot contusion that never seemed too serious. So this is about what we expected. Um, Adam Thielen looking more like his old self. I'm seeing quotes saying that he's looking like 2016, 2018 Adam Thielen.
Mm.
Um, so I don't know how much to buy into that or not, but I am excited for this Vikings offense under O'Connell.
Saying Kirk loves throwing Adam Thielen the ball. It's just, I think even if Adam Thielen wasn't looking like his old self, he's still going to be that annoying receiver that's going to get a ton of targets from Kirk Cousins, especially in the red zone. And
Especially
also,
in the red zone.
just to go back for one quick second, did you see
Yeah.
Melvin Gordon tweet the other day? Because
The The phone
Yeah.
in his sock.
Yeah, they had said like he has a pad in his sock now because he's coming off a foot contusion. He's just like, yeah, that's just my phone.
Excuse me, sir. That's my cell phone.
Yeah, it's hilarious, bro. I
Yeah.
love when NFL players like sort of not clap back, but just respond to stuff like that because it's like, nah, dog, that's
Yeah.
my phone. Chill out. Y'all go fuck my money up.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like he's going to be just fine.
Yeah,
Um, Adam Schefter tweeting out that Alvin Kamara is unlikely to face a suspension this year. I think this is news that we're pretty much already aware of. So that doesn't surprise me too much, but obviously moves him up the ranks a little bit more as we get more and more sure or closer to sure that he's going to be around for the whole year.
agreed. Definitely agree with that. I think a lot of people were fading him just because we were so uncertain of this, but that 2 month pushback on the court date, all that stuff going on is definitely just he's gonna play. He'll be fine. He's not gonna face any repercussions this year, but something to keep in mind, at least for dynasty and just any league, any keeper league that you have, that next year you may not have him. So just something to stay aware of as well.
Sure. Yeah, good point. Um, and then we get into some of the preseason stuff. George Pickens lighting up Twitter. Everybody's pounding the table for George Pickens after his performance in the preseason.
You
I didn't
see,
get a chance to actually watch the game. I saw some of the highlights that have been going
hmm
around. What did you think?
I actually did watch this one. It was interesting. It's like I said. I think I said it a couple weeks, not even a couple weeks ago. Last week we were talking about the AFC North. For some reason, him and Mitchell Trubisky have been working together a lot, and you kind of saw that sort of translate through on the football field. Now, you want to hope because I don't think Deontay Johnson and them played a whole lot in this game. I don't remember, but George Pickens was acting as the number one receiver in that instance because he was out there on the field with all the backup players. I don't think he's going to get this same amount of volume that he did during these preseason games because he was the number one option out there, but it is something that may happen. But just to show that chemistry is there between Mitch Trubisky and George Pickens, especially on that back of the end zone catch that he had, it shows they kind of have that timing a little bit worked out, and Mitch has been working with them. I'm not gonna say this means smash on George Pickens. He's not a fifth round pick now. He's not this super elite wide receiver, but there is promise there. And
Yeah.
to say that he might be that rookie wide receiver that does take that step towards the latter half of the season would not be far fetched.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you there, but I might have to bust your balls a little bit. I'm pretty sure
Mm-hmm.
Mason Rudolph is the one who threw him that touchdown, brother.
Was it Mason? It was Mason. It was.
Pretty sure.
It was. I fucked it.
But
I fucked it.
But
I fucked
I
it.
have been hearing the same reports that Mitch Trubisky and George Pickens have been working well together. I just don't know that that rapport was seen on the field yet, but we'll get there.
I
We'll get
fucked
there.
it. Yeah, Mitch Trubisky threw to the little white man for the touchdown, number 89. I forget who that is. Do you know who that
I
is?
don't even know. If if I had been watching the game, I could tell you, but that's another one I gotta get around to watching for
That's
the
on.
next episode.
So that's on me. Big mistake on my part. I did watch the game. I just shit, my fault.
No worries. No worries. Just want to make sure we correct it for the people. That's all.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Um, and then some other preseason news that I feel like some people are going to discount more than they should. The Jets' backfield splits from the first preseason game. So Zach Wilson was out there for 9 snaps. Michael Carter was on the field with him for 7 of those. Brees Hall only in for 2. So still a situation to monitor if this changes throughout the rest of the preseason and Brees Hall starts working in more or getting to a majority of the snaps with the starting quarterback on the field, which I guess is going to be Joe Flacco considering
Yeah, Zach Wilson's
Zach
not
Wilson
going
is
to play the
hurt.
rest of the preseason at all.
Yeah. But if we see that go up, then things is business as usual. We've talked about how much we like Brees Hall coming into the season, but man, they don't put the starters out there for no reason. They don't do it just to play around. Like they're doing it to see what their offense is going to look like in the regular season. So if they are having Michael Carter out there for 7 of the snaps with Zach Wilson, like that's a clear indication that he's going to get a lot of work.
So, in respect to that, does that change Brees Hall's draft, ADP for you?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Again, like hopefully you're not drafting this early. Hopefully you still got a week or two before your drafts come up, or even Labor Day weekend, and we still have some time to kind of feel this out. But yeah, if I'm drafting right now, I'm moving Brees Hall down. If he's splitting that heavily with Michael Carter, that lack of volume in an offense that we're already a little bit unsure about is just too much risk for me to take him in the back of the third, early fourth round.
100% agreed. It's just when when the team shows you what they're going to do, you have to believe it, you know? And this doesn't mean that Michael Carter's going to be the guy for the season, but it at least means they're not ready to hand the keys to the castle over to Brees Hall yet. So it might be a
Right.
situation where 6, 7 games into the season, Brees Hall could very well be the number one running back on the team, but it's going to take some time before they give him that trust, and it just kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point too. Is that even if this trend continues with Michael Carter getting the majority of the snaps with the starters, he's Brees Hall still could take over later down the line. It just means I'm not going to take him as early as we were prior.
Yeah, agreed.
Um, and then this news was actually pretty surprising to me. Deshaun Watson proposes to the NFL an 8-game suspension and a $5 million fine. This screams desperation to me. This makes it seem like he knows the NFL has a good case, that they're likely to suspend him for a full year or at least more than 6 games if he's willing to up that and impose a fine on himself. So I would be leaning closer to full season suspension for Deshaun right now.
Yeah, it's really not looking good at all. Especially, did you watch any of that game?
I went back and I think I caught, what did he have, like 2 or 3 drives? I
Yeah.
think I caught all of Deshaun's plays.
So, I mean, despite the play, I'm not even worried about how he played because, spoiler alert, he didn't play very well. He hasn't played football in a year. It's been 500 plus days, I think, since he's actually played a football game. So, this is the
Yeah,
first time he was getting on a field. But what I was concerned about was the fan reaction to him being out there on the field. That was
yeah,
nuts. To the point where I think the Browns might even consider, like, yeah, we're just going to suspend him for the year. This has been kind of a circus. We don't know what to deal with, but it was crazy to actually really see that. Like, I knew something was
yeah,
going to happen. I knew it wasn't going to be all, roses, but that one was wild to see the fans chanting because that was bad. I've never seen anything like that before.
yeah. Yeah, I didn't get the full experience because, like I said, I just went back on Game Pass and I was watching the condensed version, so I didn't get to see all of that, but I definitely heard it come through the broadcast.
Yeah, it's bad. And it's a distraction. It's a football team's worst nightmare, honestly.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if he gets that full year. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets multiple years. But this is it's an insane situation that I don't see getting better anytime soon.
yeah, yeah. So if you're counting on Watson playing this year, you might want to reconsider. I've also heard some rumors flying around about Browns maybe considering trading for Garoppolo now, which would make a lot of sense. Jacoby Brissett is probably not the best option if you have a guy like Jimmy around. We'll see if they go through with that. How drastically do you think that would affect your Browns rankings?
I don't know because here's the thing. Did you see the news that came out about Jimmy Garoppolo yesterday?
I did. I don't know how much I'm buying into it, but I did see that.
Yeah, I don't. It feels like a smokescreen to me because I've also always thought of Jimmy Garoppolo as sort of like that game managing quarterback. So to hear that he doesn't have a playbook and he doesn't listen after they sign him to that contract, that doesn't make sense to me. It feels like news that was leaked to sort of lower his sort of lower his value. So I do think that trade is coming up soon.
Maybe it was the Browns.
Yeah. Like somebody close to that camp, somebody involved had to have leaked some sort of news like that because
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense that he would just ghost them after signing that contract and he's been there. I've never heard Kyle Shanahan say anything like negative about Jimmy Garoppolo and they had the opportunity to bench him and not start him last year and they didn't. So this report
Right.
sort of feels like it came out of nowhere, which kind of leads me
Yeah.
to believe that this trade is coming up soon.
Yeah. Definitely. I hesitate to say exciting times because I don't want to use the word exciting with Deshaun Watson, but exciting for what could happen on the trade market. That's always fun to see.
Yeah,
Um,
trades are always cool, but it's just the circumstances are insane. And that's a lot of
yeah,
money coming out the Browns' pockets if this trade happens.
so much. Yeah, yeah, it'll be nuts. And then last piece of news before we get into the divisional stuff is just that Tom Brady is currently away from the team. I believe this was a scheduled leave of absence. I think they knew that this was coming. He's dealing with a personal matter, and I think he'll be back like after the 20th, after their second preseason game or something like that, is what I heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I'd just let Tom Brady kind of do whatever he wants at this point. He doesn't need to be there.
Yeah,
This is news, but it's also just he'll be back when the season starts.
he'll be just fine.
Yeah, it's Tom Brady.
Yeah. All right. So now that we're all up to date, everybody knows what's going on around the league. Let's get into the NFC East. Uh, Will and I are Commanders fans.
Unfortunately.
Very unfortunately. We are fans, but after 25 years of sorrow and just disappointment year after year, we might be a little bit pessimistic. So take what we're saying with a grain of salt, but also probably closer to the truth.
So I'm gonna do my best to just be realistic. I'm gonna look at the facts for what they are, and then I try not to be too much of an asshole. Last year, I really didn't watch too many. I guess at that time, Washington football team games. I kind of gave up pretty early in the season, especially after Eric and I were at the season opener and we saw Ryan
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick get get his hip subluxation, and we were like, yeah, it's gonna be one of those seasons, and it was. So, gonna do our best to at least remain realistic throughout this evaluation of this team. We're gonna get it out the way early. That way, we can just get into the rest of it.
Yeah. Pour one out for Fitzmagic, dude. Sorry to see it. That could have been so exciting.
Yeah. Also retired now, so
Yeah.
great. Good end to a decent, good career. I don't a magical career. We'll call it a magical
Dude,
career.
he was fucking sick. I
Yeah.
don't care how many picks he threw. He was a gunslinger. He
He,
had fun every time he was on the field. That's what you love to see.
yeah, he was electric, man. So, good career to one of the best journeymen to play the game. I'll definitely say
Mm-hmm.
that. And, let's go ahead and get into it and start off with the quarterback position for the Commanders. We've got Mr. Carson Wentz. This depth chart is shaping out Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke, the new rookie Sam Howell that we picked up in the draft from UNC. That's where he's at?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Me personally, for Carson Wentz, he's not on my draft radar, but he does have that sneaky little potential to be a fantasy relevant player. He had not a good season last year because the Colts didn't end up doing anything. But in terms of fantasy, there were weeks where he was a viable fantasy option. Sometimes there were weeks where he was a good fantasy option. The thing with Carson Wentz is you never know. He's one of those guys who can come out and he'll throw 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, your team will win the game, or he'll come out and throw 180 yards, 1 touchdown, and 5 interceptions. You never really know what you're going to get from the guy. So, in terms of reliability, he's about as unreliable as they come, but the talent is there. So, it's a weird situation. He's a guy who can come out there and get 40, 50 rushing yards in a game as well. Or he'll get 2 sprained ankles in one play. You never know what you're going to get with Carson Wentz. So in terms of fantasy, I'm avoiding him. I'm trying not to be too negative in terms of a team outlook, but I see him as an upgrade over Taylor Heineke from last year in terms of
Yeah.
just pure quarterback talent, in terms of being able to throw the ball, in terms of just size and durability. Even though Carson Wentz has struggled with injuries as much as he has, he's not 5'10", 190 like Taylor Heineke is. He is built he does have the build of an elite quarterback prospect. So
Yeah.
I'll let you go ahead and take it from there because I don't want to keep going before I violate.
Yeah, so I just pulled up his fantasy numbers from last year. He did finish the season as the 13th overall quarterback,
Hmm.
but only averaged 15.2 fantasy points per game, which was 17th in terms of points per game among quarterbacks. Not somebody that you're looking to start in a one quarterback league by any means. Maybe as like a risky QB2 in Superflex. Um, but that's not really what we're here to talk about. I don't think anybody wants Carson Wentz as their QB. More so that I agree with you, Will. He is an upgrade for all of this team's weapons. I think this is a bump for Terry. I think this means good things for Jahan Dotson. Hopefully, it means that the offense runs a little bit more smoothly. We get a few more red zone opportunities, scoring positions. We just stay on the field longer. Um, I, I'm still not overly optimistic. This is going to be a tough division. Cowboys defense is much improved. Eagles defense is much improved. We got a lot to go through. Another another thing though is that NFC East teams have one of the easiest strengths of schedules going into the season. So if that matters to you in the way that you draft, something to keep in mind. I'm just still nervous.
Yeah, I'm extremely nervous about it. I want to say though the future does look a little bit bright. Sam Howell, when he came out there in the preseason, he was actually looking pretty good. For those of
Yeah,
you who don't remember, just because there's a lot of recency bias, we picked up Sam Howell in the fifth round, third round,
fifth,
fifth round.
fifth. Yeah,
We picked him up in the fifth round. After his junior year of college, he was actually touted as like a top quarterback option coming out of that year. Senior year,
yeah.
he kind of tailed off a little bit, wasn't as good as junior year, so he fell in the draft. But he was considered a first round talent after his junior year in college.
Even the senior year, like yeah, some people had their doubts, but he lost Deami Brown, who's
Mm-hmm.
actually on the Commanders. He lost both of his running backs, Michael Carter and Javante Williams. He lost a lot of offensive line talent. I think he lost some other receiver weapons like Daz Newsome and some other guys. I'm forgetting their names. So the UNC just as a whole in skill positions and offensive line around him just weren't very good.
Mm-hmm.
So he went from his passing numbers decreased, but his rushing numbers spiked a ton.
Yeah.
He looked really good as a rusher, had a lot of rushing touchdowns. So he made up for it in other ways his senior year. It was surprising to see him go in the fifth round, considering him, along with a lot of these guys, Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, were all being touted as potential first round talents and then just fell so much further.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he might be exciting for the future. But let's continue to move on into these weapons. We get into the running back group. I guess the starter being Antonio Gibson, things are not looking good for him right now.
I have to say, it is an absolute carousel as far as I see it. Antonio Gibson got the nod early on, and then he fumbled on the first drive. And uh, me personally, I think that this is if I was running the team, I would have Brian Robinson as our number one like rusher in terms of ground and pound rushing, and then use Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick more in the passing game because that's where they really excel. That was kind of why we picked Antonio Gibson in the first place, and for some reason we're kind of using him as a three down rusher.
Yeah,
It's
we've never given him the opportunity in the passing game, even though he was a wide receiver in college. Like,
yeah,
seems strange to me.
yeah. It doesn't really make too much sense, but in terms of talent, Antonio Gibson is a talented running back. We've seen him prosper in the NFL. We've seen him be great, but we also seen him break down, which is why I believe they did draft Brian Robinson as high as they did, so they could have that sort of safety blanket. So, with
Yeah,
that being said, in terms of the ground game, it's going to be pretty split between those two. At least I could foresee that happening in terms of they don't really want Antonio Gibson shouldering the entire season because he's shown that he can't really do it yet,
yeah,
you know? And just to keep everybody healthy and keep the team running as smoothly as it can, that's probably the best way to go about doing it. And then JD McKissick, we saw who he was last year in fantasy. He should be a very similar role this year. He's going to get a lot of the receiving work. He's going to be that guy coming out the backfield on those wheel routes, on those out routes out the backfield. It's just JD McKissick is probably the safest pick out of all of these, depending on the format you're playing in. If you're playing PPR, half PPR, Uh, Brian Robinson is probably the best dynasty pick out of these three in terms of just longevity and who's going to get the most burn going forward. And Antonio Gibson is the biggest question mark, but he's also probably the biggest boomer bust player out of these three. So it
Yeah.
really is a
I,
weird split between three of them.
yeah. I think Antonio Gibson is clearly the most talented. I think it's so funny, dude. Ron Rivera went from calling him his Christian McCaffrey last year to now talking about it as like a D'Angelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart 1-2 punch with him and Brian Robinson. Who's even sure if we're gonna get that? Like you said, he started the game with the starters, and after dealing with ball security issues all of last year, he fumbles on the second play of the game. Brian Robinson replaces him, plays the rest of the snaps with the starters, and then Gibson came back in and played with the second team, which is not a very good vote of confidence.
Yeah.
Um, I think you're probably right. Brian Robinson is going to carve out a good early down role with this team. I don't know that it's going to be super valuable fantasy wise right off the rip. It's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of in between the 20s stuff. I guess maybe he'll be their goal line back. That's yet to be seen. Um, I'm also still a little bit worried about J.D. McKissick, even though his role I feel like is the most cemented. Carson Wentz just doesn't check down to the running backs nearly as often as like league average. So that might limit his upside, if you even want to call it that. So this backfield's a shit show. I don't know that I really want to touch it in redraft, but Brian Robinson is probably a good dynasty stash at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I actually did forget about. I always forget that Carson Wentz is our starting quarterback because it just never really should have happened. But hey, we're gonna keep moving on to the wide receiver group. This is probably the group that I have the most optimism about. You got
For
Terry
sure.
McLaurin, Mr. 1,000 yards every year so far with whoever it is throwing the ball to him. He's kind of
Yep.
proven at this point that he is that steady NFL top 10 talent. He's reliable. He makes a lot of contested catches. He just is the guy in this offense, and that should continue forward. There should be no reason why that changes. I don't foresee that changing in any way. Out of everybody on the Commanders, Terry McLaurin is the safest pick. I think I'm very
Yeah.
confident in saying that.
Yeah. I'm trying to pull up his ADP right now to see where he's going. But yeah, Terry's a dog. He's been fantastic since he's entered the league. Like you said, it doesn't really matter who's throwing to him. And I think this is probably the best quarterback he's ever had to this point in his career, even though, man, that sucks to say. Um,
Yeah,
it looks like he's going as the wide receiver 17, which,
very low.
like, talent. I, I mean, he's on the list that I'm looking at, he's still going ahead of Mike Williams, DK Metcalf, Chris Godwin, Darnell Mooney. I might lean towards those guys. Again, maybe that's my Washington pessimism talking. Obviously, as a talent, I love Terry. I think he's very capable of putting up a huge fantasy season. And, if touchdown luck breaks his way, if Carson is the upgrade that we hope he is, then of course he could finish, within the top 15. But I think I'm probably taking most of those guys that I mentioned that are getting drafted after him ahead of him.
I just say, I mean, I'd agree with that. Terry McLaurin, it's funny because he's literally the only Washington player I've drafted to my team in the last 5 to 6 years, just because I am that
Yeah.
confident in him as a player. But the fact that he is going that late is, yeah, it's kind of a good price for him too. It's a good value, at least for the potential. But it all stands to be seen from Carson Wentz because a lot of it kind of depends on how he plays as well. But Terry McLaurin, I guess we're kind of moving in that territory where he is kind of quarterback proof. He's one of those quarterback proof receivers. So I'm a little bit higher than the consensus ADP, but that just means he's probably a good value, in my opinion.
Will's opinion.
In my opinion.
That's okay. We can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
All love to Terry, but I don't know that I'm going to have too much of him on my teams. And then behind him, Jahan Dotson has looked really good so far throughout training camp. He seems to have cemented his spot as the number two on this team, even ahead of Curtis Samuel if he's healthy. But I think right now he's still dealing with another injury once again.
Always a pretty big if with Curtis.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because he's a really talented dude. He's showed flashes throughout his career back when he was with Carolina, but he just can't seem to stay healthy.
Saying
Um,
younger than Terry McLaurin too. Been in the league 2 years longer.
yeah, which is wild. Same team too. Both
Hmm.
came from Ohio State.
Yeah.
Um, and then behind Curtis Samuel, you got guys like Cam Sims and I don't know, more scrubs that you probably don't have to worry about fantasy wise. Jahan Dotson is definitely somebody I'm interested in from a dynasty perspective. He's carved out a good role. I think he's very talented. If Carson Wentz turns out to be something good, then he's in a good place. If we end up with a different quarterback, hopefully another improvement. The talent is there, but I wouldn't expect a whole bunch in redraft for this season.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really super to expect from this team in general. Even just rolling into the next group, we got the tight ends group, which is led by Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas really has, when you look at Logan Thomas as a player, he's really only had one good season, and that was last season. Prior to that, I think the most catches he had in the season was like 53, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
you're talking about 2 seasons ago, right? Because
yeah,
last season is the one that he got hurt
two
fairly
seasons
early.
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, he didn't
yeah.
play much last season. He was hurt. 2 seasons ago. Um, I'm not confident in him being a good tight end option. He might be a viable streamer, but nobody that I would draft to my team and have him be my number one tight end. I would say
Pretty
from
sure.
you go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think he's still on the PUP. Also, I don't think he's fully healthy from that injury yet.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a while before he's even back,
Yeah,
and I don't know who's really in line to step up next. I guess John Bates, but he's never really been a great receiving option as well. He's been more of a blocking tight end than anything.
yeah. He showed some flashes last year, but yet to be seen whether he can be a difference maker in the passing game. We also drafted Cole Turner, I believe, out of Nevada. Correct
Hmm.
me if I'm wrong. Um, there have been good reports about him out of camp saying that he's been really athletic, making a lot of good uh, red zone, end zone catches and stuff like that. Rookie tight ends not super dependable in that first year. Typically takes them a few years to break out. So, from a fantasy perspective, probably just straying away from this group.
Yeah, and just to kind of round off the Commanders as a whole, Terry McLaurin's an option. Antonio Gibson, it's risky. It's risky. If you want to go for it, I mean, go for it. It's not going to be me. But again, that's just sort of the pessimism that comes with us being Washington fans as long as we've been. But I'm not super duper confident in this team as a fantasy viable team besides Terry McLaurin. Outside of that, you're taking your chances, and I hope it pays off for you, but it very well could not.
Couldn't agree more. Well said.
Yeah.
Uh, let's move on. Get away from that into our hated rivals, the Cowboys. I'll be non-biased here. We can talk about this normally. Dak Prescott leading us off at quarterback. Um, Ever since the injury, his rushing upside hasn't really been there. He started off his career with kind of like a sneaky good rushing upside. I think he had like 6 rushing touchdowns every year for the first 3 years of his career, decent amount of yards. Yet to be seen whether he can get that back. Still a fantastic quarterback as a thrower. He's going to put up a ton of yards in a very high paced and efficient offense, but not the most exciting fantasy option.
Yeah, I think Dak, he's a good fantasy option. He's a good quarterback, but his team, at least just looking at this offense on paper, it has taken a drastic sort of step back. And I'm not going to say it's a super drastic, but in losing Amari Cooper, that's a pretty big blow to the receiver group. The fact that Michael Gallup's not going to be able to play for like the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season, another huge blow. James Washington also out. So it's like he's kind of working with what he's got. And the running backs group, they're both good receivers. CeeDee Lamb obviously is who he is. Dalton Schultz is who he is. So Dak's got targets, but it's just going to be interesting to see how it sort of shapes out and how this offense is even ran for the first few weeks because it's it's a strange group. It's a strange group, but I could still see Dak having that top 10 fantasy quarterback potential just because he does throw for as many yards as they do. Their offense is as high powered as it is. It shouldn't really matter who's in it as long as they're still running the same schemes that they are. But it's going to be interesting. He's I mean, obviously, Dak Prescott in 2 quarterback leagues, you're taking Dak Prescott every single time. Single quarterback, it's going to be a little bit shakier. So it's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we talked about him a little bit more in depth in our quarterback rankings video that we put out recently. If you want a more in depth explanation, go check that out. But I believe he was just barely inside my top 12, and I think he outside of your top 12.
He was outside of my top 12.
Yeah, so he's kind of in that borderline range of QB1, at least for us. I think that he's safe. I think that he's solid, but I don't know that he's going to bring a ton of upside. But I am pretty excited, like you said, with all the subtractions from this offense, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup. I think that it could make for a nice like target funnel when it comes to CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz. And so I think it definitely gives them a big opportunity to step up, soak up a lot more targets. Um, I'm excited for CeeDee Lamb this year. It's kind of a make or break year for him just because he hasn't truly ascended into that like alpha receiver role yet. So we'll see if he can do that this season. I really liked him as a talent coming out of Oklahoma. He showed well so far, so I'm hoping he can step into that. Dalton Schultz, same way. He had a really good season last season, and I think he's in line for even more targets in 2022. Jalen Tolbert, rookie out of, I think it's like Southern Mississippi or some
I can check real
no-name
quick.
school. But he's another guy that I liked as a prospect. He's a good all-arounder. Nick Ercolino over at BDGE has comped him to Adam Thielen, where he can just kind of do it all. He's good in contested catches. He's a good route runner. Just the younger version. So I think that he's in line for a decent role, at least until Michael Gallup can come back. Um, so I think those 3 weapons are pretty interesting in redraft leagues this year.
I agree. Uh, CD Lamb, as a prospect, I actually liked him a lot more than because he was drafted the same year as like Jerry Jeudy and stuff. He was actually my favorite wide receiver prospect coming out of that because I just saw more big playability out of him, and he
Yeah.
also had he was technically sound as well. So I think not Jalen, CD Lamb is going to do fine. He's going to get that opportunity. I think he's ready for it, to be honest with you. I think this is the year that he does take that step up because he was getting very close to it last year. And
Yeah.
then Jalen Tolbert, just to add on to you, out of South Alabama,
South South Alabama. I remembered after my rant. Yeah.
hmm which I, for some reason, thought, oh, yeah, he went to the same school as Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill went to West Alabama,
Yeah.
which I didn't know there were so
Yeah.
many. Is there an East and a or North Alabama as well?
Who knows, man?
Who knows? But in terms of this wide receiver group, all of the receivers, Dalton Schultz, he was sneaky good last year. I had him on one of my teams. I picked him up off of waivers. He was like a guy who was consistently getting me like 20 plus points in like PPR formats.
Yeah.
Like he was a
Yeah. He
consistent guy.
was.
Yeah. He's actually pretty talented.
I'm pulling it up right now. He finished as the overall tight end 3. He played all 17 games, and a lot of the guys in this top end didn't play all 17. So points per game, I believe he finished as tight end 5. But regardless, still really impressive, and I think we both agree that he's in line for more work this year.
Yeah, 100%. And all these guys are up for more work just because Amari Cooper is gone. We're going to kind of see who's who. We're going to see if Michael Gallup was worth the contract that he got coming off of this injury. Jalen Tolbert, we're going to see if he's one of the guys. CeeDee Lamb, we're going to really see if he's an alpha receiver, which I think he's got the talent to do. And just kind of rolling over from that into this running backs group between Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. There have been reports that Tony Pollard's been lining up in the slot and stuff like that as well. So that is another receiving option I guess they have. I don't know how effective he's going to be from the slot, but knowing him as a talent and just his athletic profile, I think he will be fine in the slot coming out of receiver. Ezekiel Elliott, uh, this year we've been getting reports from some of the coaches saying, "Oh yeah, this is his year. He's going to be back. We're going to get back to the old Zeke. He's been looking like his old self. He's been shedding pounds. He's kind of back to his old weight that he was coming into the league." Me personally, I'm not buying into the hype because losing weight and just getting more opportunity isn't going to change the player that he's sort of transitioned into these last couple years. His first few years, he was very elusive. He was also powerful, had that speed. Seeing him now, that top end speed isn't really there as much. He's not as elusive. A lot of the games I've been laughing about it because it's been watching him sort of just run into the line and go as far as he can before he trips and falls. Has essentially been Ezekiel Elliott for the last 2 years. I'm hoping that he does sort of bounce back a little bit, because even if he does bounce back a little bit with the sort of volume that he gets in this offense, he's going to be a top end fantasy option. It'll make where he's getting drafted at now more of a value in terms of you getting a running back one for what, a second at back end second round or high end third round pick. That's
Around
excellent.
that range, yeah.
Yeah, and that's if he bounces back to even, let's say, three-quarters of the player that he was before. That's still going to be a great fantasy option at running back. So
Yeah.
I know you've got probably more of the facts and statistics to back that up, but this is just from me, from what I've seen of Ezekiel Elliott as a player and just him from fantasy from the past few years.
Yeah, I think that all of what you said is fair. I think I could probably make a case for and against Zeke. There's good points on either end of the argument. I want to ask you, I have it pulled up in front of me. Do you
Mm-hmm.
know where Ezekiel Elliott finished overall last year at the running back rankings? If you had to guess.
If I had to guess, I would say, I don't know, because he didn't really pick it up ever. He was kind of consistently kind of mid. But he finished like the RB, what, 22?
Six.
Six? Really?
Finished as the overall RB6.
Wow, I never would have
So
thought that.
yeah, and I don't think a lot of people would have thought that based on, all the talk and buzz about him being washed and stuff like that. I don't want to overhype that overall finish because he did play all 17 games, and that's not typical from the running back position. So he's competing with a lot of guys that missed a lot of games. When you look at fantasy points per game, he's a lot closer to where you said he finished as 15
Okay.
in fantasy points per game, which I think is more important and more relevant. But I just wanted to throw that in there as something, a kind of surprising stat. He was played every game and he was somewhat consistent enough to finish inside that top 10. Um, he was also dealing with a PCL injury for most of the season last season that
Mm-hmm.
potentially could have hampered him. I'm not sure how much of that was, him aging and declining versus how much of it was the injury. But that's something to keep in mind if, you want to be optimistic for Zeke coming back to his old self. I think with Amari Cooper gone and a lack of depth in the pass catching group for the Cowboys, I think he could see more passing work.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could see him in that 70 to 80 target range. We'll see if that translates, into any more touchdowns for him or whatever. But the passing work is what you want to see, especially in half PPR and PPR leagues. So I think I'm a little bit higher on him than you are, just from the way that you're describing it. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm also nervous that maybe at this point in his career he's just declined as a talent.
Let's say my biggest thing with Zeke is that I do think the talent has declined. I think the talent has declined. I'm not going to say he's washed because that would just insinuate he's not a good option at running back. But I do think that the Cowboys' sort of stubborn unwillingness to give up on him and the fact that they invested so much into him is that he does get that volume, you know? So that RB6
Yep.
finish does attest to the fact that they will give him his opportunities. So they're not going to take anything away from him, you know?
Yeah.
And like I said,
Yeah,
if he
and
bounces back, he's a absolutely great option in fantasy.
yeah, yeah, going like you said at a spot ADP wise that could really be valuable to your team to get a starting running back that late. Um, to just touch more on Tony Pollard, you mentioned him lining up in the slot. I've seen the same reports. We've even seen him do that some last year.
Hmm.
Uh, Ezekiel Elliott has gotten the vote of confidence from the coaches and from Jerry Jones saying he's a cornerstone part of this offense and that he's going to be the starter. So I still don't see Tony Pollard like supplanting him as the one, which I know fantasy Twitter has been calling for years. So if you're hoping to get Tony as a starting running back. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think he's definitely fantasy relevant and is going to be involved in this offense as a rusher and as a pass catcher.
100%. He's going to be involved, but he's not going to be the guy unless something happens to Zeke, which God forbid that happens. But unless something happens to Zeke, Tony Pollard's not going to be the number one running back on this team. It's just kind of a fact of the matter. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's pretty much all of my Cowboys outlook right there. It's funny because I hate the Cowboys as a team just because, Commanders fans or whatever. But I really do like these players. Like, I actually got a chance to meet Zeke in college. I got a chance to get to talk to him because I was hanging out with the football team at Maryland after they had played Ohio State. And I'm a big fan of CeeDee Lamb. I even like Dalton Schultz and Dak Prescott. I just kind of hate Cowboys fans is what it really gets down to. But we can talk about that in the comments if y'all want to comment. Hey, don't forget, subscribe, comment, leave a like, join the community, man. We finally got our Discord running, so there should be some links and stuff for that to people to join the Discord if you want to be a part of the community. So, yeah,
Yeah, sound off, everybody.
quick
Let us know
plug.
what's good.
Quick plug.
So yeah, let's move on to the Eagles. I got kind of a rant here coming with AJ Brown, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
Jalen Hurts looked fantastic in the preseason opener. Opened it up with one drive. He went 6 for 6 for 80 yards and a touchdown with a perfect passer rating. It was really encouraging to see. You love to see that. I think I might move him up my quarterback rankings even a little bit further. I had him at 6. He might have to break into that upper echelon with like the Patrick Mahomeses and stuff like that. Um, it was kind of surprising considering the offseason has been filled with uncertainty about him and his consistency, his inaccuracy, stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. I'm curious to hear your take on his performance and just your fantasy outlook for him overall.
So I think the biggest thing to consider, just because we have been getting all that bad news about him, all that, I think the best thing to consider going into that and having that news is that the Eagles' defense is actually pretty good. I think that's one thing people discount a lot. So if he's running against the ones and yeah, he's throwing interceptions, I think that's more of an attest to the Eagles' defense than that is a knock to Jalen Hurts and his talent. So to see him come out there and, sort of thrive was really good to see. Really shut up all the critics. I think I was slightly higher than him, higher than you on our QB rankings. I think I had him at 5.
I believe so. Yeah, one spot above me.
Yeah, I think it was just one spot. And like I said then, I think he does have the potential to be a QB1 in fantasy. And last night, or not last night, but over the weekend during the preseason game 1, it kind of showed that he does have that potential. So it was encouraging to see. And if you were wondering about him as a fantasy prospect, your pick got a little bit safer. Got a little
Yeah.
bit safer.
Yeah. So I'm all for giving him the praise that he deserves, especially with all the criticism that he's received. I will say, it was just one drive in the preseason. We want to see that consistently on a game to game basis in
Mm-hmm.
full game scenarios, but love to see it from Jalen Hurts. I've been a fan of his and a supporter of his since he came out of Oklahoma. Glad to see him doing well. This running back group, though, kind of a carousel.
Kind of a
We're not really
carousel.
sure. Go ahead.
Kind of a carousel, and we actually did just get news about 20 minutes ago regarding Miles Sanders
Okay.
dealing with a hamstring injury, so he's not practicing currently
All right.
as of
Good to know.
20 minutes ago. So if you were wondering how muddy this is, it got even muddier.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen reports that Kenneth Gainwell has been mixing in with the ones quite a bit, been getting a lot of the passing work, taking that from Miles Sanders, even potentially getting red zone work, which for a smaller back is a little bit surprising, but he was good at it at Memphis in college. Boston Scott is still, the old vet that's been there for a while. I know he's going to get some touches there as well. I have never been a huge Miles Sanders fan, so I don't really see that changing. Things are muddy. I probably won't touch him. Kenneth Gainwell might be an interesting late round flyer, but I don't know. Things seem pretty jumbled up in this backfield. Are you willing to invest in anybody?
Not me personally, just because it is as muddy as it is, and the fact that you have Jalen Hurts on the team. So in terms of goal line carries and stuff, that could very much be vultured by him too, because as
Very
everyone
true.
knows, he has a lot of rushing upside. So me personally, I'm not buying into this running back group a whole lot. Like you said, Kenneth Gainwell for a late round pick, might be interesting just to see what happens, how this offense shapes out, and if Miles Sanders can stay healthy, which he hasn't really proven that he can yet. But I will say, I think reports were pretty positive going into this season for Miles Sanders in terms of just him returning back to that player he was more so of his rookie year before, he dealt with all the injuries year two. But I'm still not super high on him, especially at the price that he's going at right now. He's kind of like he's a seventh round pick, and the people that he's going around, I would probably much rather pick up than him. So just to take a look and see what that is.
Yeah, I'm also looking at it.
Yeah, so around Miles Sanders, you got players like Elijah Moore, you got Michael Thomas, you got Adam Thielen, Joe Burrow in terms of the quarterback prospects, Amon-Ra St.
Yeah,
Brown. It's just a lot of people I'm a lot more confident in terms of fantasy than Miles Sanders. So,
totally agree. Yeah, even at the running back position, Rashad Penny, Chase Edmonds, Kareem Hunt, Ramondre Stevenson, all those guys, I either wouldn't have too far off or I'd rather have ahead of him.
yeah, no,
So,
that's just how I feel about that one. So I think we're on the same page there with that.
yeah. And we get into this wide receiver group. AJ Brown, the new addition to the team. I think he's going to be a huge benefit for Jalen Hurts. I think that adds to his upside even more, having a true alpha number one and Devontae Smith taking another step up this year. Interestingly enough, he didn't see a single target in his preseason debut with the team, even though he lined up for quite a few snaps with the starters. I did see a report after the fact. Somebody was asking AJ Brown about that specifically, why he wasn't targeted. And Brown responded that Jalen told him before the game that he wasn't going to throw to him tonight. That was just like decided before the game that he wasn't going to look his way. I don't know if that's just because, like, I've seen all the reports coming out of training camp that he's been hyper targeted. Maybe he was just trying to prove a point that he could throw to other people. I don't know. What's your take on that?
That's fucking stupid, is what I think about that. I think that's really stupid because why would you? Yeah. I mean, that's frustrating that they can just that a player can just do that. So yeah, I'm just not throwing you the ball today, dog. My bad.
Yeah.
I got some shit I gotta prove. I'm not throwing the ball to my best receiver, but it
Yeah.
shouldn't be the case going into the regular season. It might have even been a preservation type of thing where like, yeah, I'm not throwing you the ball so you don't get hit. Possibly, maybe. That's just the most
Maybe.
optimistic look at it. Other than that, I just think
Yeah.
it's really stupid. Um, you said you had a rant about AJ Brown. Is that?
Yeah. So you know about our dynasty league. I just traded AJ Brown away recently. I was a little bit nervous. Obviously, seeing this from the preseason is a good sign for AJ Brown, but I was just looking into his career averages and the situation that he's walking into. So in 2021 for the Titans, their team pass attempt or pass percentage was 49.3%, which was second to last in the league. The Eagles were at 47.3, dead last in the league. So he goes from second to last in team pass attempts.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2021 for Jalen Hurts, he had just over 3,000 passing yards on barely over 400 attempts, only 16 passing touchdowns, and a 61.3% completion percentage. Not great numbers as a passer. But to break that down, so they started the first 7 games passing the ball 34.6 times per game, and Jalen Hurts had 1.4 passing touchdowns per game. And then came that offensive coordinator switch with Shane Steichen coming in to call plays. So the last 8 games of the season, that number went from 34.6 to 23.8 pass attempts per game, which is just abysmal. It's so low. And he also went down to 0.75 passing touchdowns per game. So this gets me into kind of like a ceiling versus floor debate with AJ Brown, where people, I believe his ADP is what, like wide receiver 10?
Yeah, he is the wide
Wide
receiver
receiver
10.
9.
Wide receiver 9? Is that what you're saying?
10, 9, yeah, somewhere
Same
in that
difference.
range.
Same difference, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah, from a ceiling perspective, right? Let's say the Eagles maintain that first half of the season pace, even though they switched coordinators, even though they went run heavy and were more successful. Let's say they still go with that, middle of the pack passing, which would put Jalen Hurts around 560 passing attempts for the season, similar to Kirk Cousins. AJ Brown is an alpha wide receiver one. Obviously, I'm not, disrespecting his talent. He's a phenomenal receiver. So let's give him the same target share as like Justin Jefferson at around 30%, which if you maintain the same completion percentage for Jalen Hurts, that puts him at 167 targets. That translates to 102 catches, 1,652 yards, and 7 touchdowns, which last year would have made him the wide receiver six, which is good. It's really good. But like the difference, the ceiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think is wide receiver six. I don't think he's pushing for wide receiver one numbers in this offense, even if they go back to higher passing volume. So if you take him at 10 and you get wide receiver six, like that's pretty cool, but it's not amazing.
I see.
Floor projection, if they stick with that second half pace and they stay really run heavy, he gets the same target share that he had last year. And again, with that same completion percentage from Jalen Hurts, that translates to 109 targets, 67 catches, just over 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns. And that's also if you bake in the same amount of games missed that he's had per year at just 2 games, because that's also an issue for him. Then he would finish as the wide receiver 29, right? So
Yeah, I see.
I after seeing the game this weekend, I'm optimistic for this offense. I'm optimistic that they are going to throw more. I don't know that they're going to get back to that same pace that they started the season with last year, but it'll probably be somewhere in the middle, right? Floor wide receiver 29, ceiling wide receiver 6. His ADP is wide receiver 10. I still don't know that I'm targeting him based on that, because he could miss games. Who knows how much they're going to run versus pass? It's just there's a lot of stuff up in the air here for me to be fully bought into AJ Brown.
And to say on top of all that, you still got Devonta Smith that he's like going to be competing with for targets. And Devonta Smith is no slouch whatsoever. He's got that.
Yeah,
He's got that same potential to be a wide receiver one in the NFL, but it's more of just a situation type of thing. Like you're saying, it's just we don't know what kind of offense they're going to be running through. And even if they do pass the ball more than they did towards the end of the season, that's still not saying much because they barely passed the ball. So
yeah,
I see where you're coming from, and I understand the downness on AJ Brown. I do get it. I don't think
yeah.
he's I don't think he's gonna be as good as he was on the Titans, just because it's not that straight up target funnel that he had on the Titans. Even last year, it was like it was him, and there was the ghost of Julio Jones and whoever else they had at wide receiver. So he's gonna end up taking some sort of knock on his numbers. And honestly, bro, your analysis right there was pretty fucking. That was good. I don't have anything I can say about that. You ran all the numbers. You crunched them.
Appreciate it. I tried my best.
Yeah, man. I got no issue with that. It makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, there's my rant on AJ Brown. Sorry if that took too long. You mentioned Devontae Smith. I think he's going to take a sophomore year jump. He's fantastic coming out of Alabama. Although he was overshadowed by Jamar Chase's just phenomenal rookie campaign. He still had a really really good rookie season historically by the numbers. So I see him taking a step up, probably commanding a decent target share above 20%. The passing options, or at least wide receiver options behind him, Quez Watkins, Zach Pascal, we probably don't need to talk about them too much. But we did just have our tight end rankings video, and you were higher on Dallas Goedert than me. He also caught a touchdown last night and looked to be more of a target than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was because of that bullshit about not wanting to throw to AJ Brown. Who knows if that was real or not, but he looked really involved, which was encouraging to see. So stonks up on him, at least for me, because I was a little bit further down on him than you were.
Yeah, I like Dallas Goedert as a player, and I like him because I think Jalen Hurts likes him. I think he is one of those reliable targets for him. He's one of those guys that like, all right, if all else fails and we're in the red zone, I'm looking at Dallas Goedert. And that does play the chemistry and stuff plays a big part. But like I said, I'm confident in Dallas Goedert. I think he's gonna have a good season. I don't know. I'm a little bit lower on him after our talk about him. But I think with that being said, with you being higher, you being lower, we probably met somewhere in the middle, and we're probably at the same spot on Dallas Goedert now.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that that pushes us closer to where his ADP is. So I think he's pretty appropriately ranked right now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So now we
So I
are
think that
moving.
just
Oh, oh shit.
you got it.
Oh god.
Transition this, brother.
All right. So that has us move into probably one of the most confusing teams in the NFC East in terms of just how it's being ran and who even some of these guys are. We're talking about the Giants, led
Yep.
by Danny Dimes himself, Mr. Daniel Jones. Uh, what is the coach's first name? I know his last name's Dabble. Is it Brian?
Brian Dable, yeah.
Brian Dable? Uh, I think the only thing that I know this team is leading the league in right now, I think, is fights in practice, which I don't know what that really means in terms of how this team is shaping up. Daniel Jones is one of the sneakiest players I feel like in fantasy. He's one of those guys who could break out and have a really good week because he is also sneaky athletic. People forget that he is as fast as he is because people look at him and say, "Oh, the white guy back there at quarterback, he's a pocket passer," but he really is a very athletic player.
Yeah.
And when it comes to just the targets and stuff he has, he's got a good set of people. He's got a good set of receivers. I don't know what they're gonna do with them. Like Kenny Galladay, I don't know who he is as a player anymore. Sterling Shepard is coming off an injury, so he's probably not going to play the beginning of the season. Correct?
Coming off an Achilles tear
Yeah,
at 29. Yeah.
yeah. He's not going to play to start the season whatsoever. Kadarius Toney is confusing because from what I've heard, he's one of those guys he's an immense talent. He has all the talent in the world, but he's also requested trades. The team has shown they're not super confident in him. I don't know if that's because of off the field issues or what's going on with him, but it's just I I don't Jordan Atkins and Daniel Bellinger. They're irrelevant to me in terms of tight end prospects in the NFL unless they prove me otherwise. But Daniel Jones, in terms of fantasy, I don't know how viable of an option he is. He's definitely someone I would feel comfortable streaming if I had no other option at quarterback. Two quarterback leagues, I'd probably give him a nod. But I just don't know what to think about Daniel Jones. And I don't think the Giants do either. I think this is a big prove it year for Daniel Jones in terms of whether he's going to be on this team after this year and if he's going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL after this year. So, I mean, if you got
100% agree.
yeah, if you got any more to say on that.
Yeah, I think that he's interesting. He's not somebody that's safe by any means. His floor is low. I guess his ceiling is somewhat high, especially with the change in coaching staff. I'm definitely excited for what Brian Daboll is going to be bringing to New York, and also his offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka. I think this is going to be really creative. I think they're going to find fun ways to use all these players, get people in space, and make the best use of their talent. If Daniel Jones can just be a distributor and get the ball to those guys, and also, like you said, show off some of his rushing ability, he has the chance to do some good work in fantasy. I'm not totally ready to buy into that yet, but I think there's a potential for that. Also, I wanted to touch on what you mentioned about Kadarius Toney. I think a lot of that team turmoil with him has cooled down. I don't think he ever was requesting a trade. I could be wrong about that, but I think that was the team coming out and saying that they might want to move
That's
on
right.
from him.
They were shopping for trades. That's what it was.
But I'm not. I can't remember the timeline. I'm not sure how much of that talk was during the transition in coaching staffs or what the deal was there. But from what I've heard, things have gotten a lot better relationship-wise between Kadarius Toney and the team. I'm not as worried about that as much anymore. Um, I am worried about him staying healthy. It seems like he's been hurt just constantly, and I think he's still dealing with an injury. He didn't play in the preseason game this weekend, but certainly somebody with a lot of upside, somebody that showed that in that Dallas game last year with 189 yards or something crazy. Um, I think if this coaching staff finds a way to use him creatively, he could be super super useful in fantasy. It's just whether he can stay on the field or not.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with just pretty much this whole Giants team. They kind of all struggle with that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Which kind of rolls
Um,
us into this running backs group.
yeah.
And, it's it's a strange place to be at with Saquon Barkley because he is a great running back. He's a good running back at the very least. You can't say he's not good. I think he's great personally. I think he's got everything he needs to be an elite running back, but he gets hurt very often. I think his play style doesn't really match who he is, who his body type as a player too much. He kind of plays like an elusive running back, a lot of jukes, a lot of jumps, a lot of cuts, but he's also huge. So that's got to take some kind of wear and tear on the joints. But without trying to get into all the medical stuff, Saquon Barkley, I feel like, has gotten a good amount of disrespect in terms of fantasy because the way I see it, if we're still looking at Christian McCaffrey as the one of one, barring any type of injury situation, we're throwing all that out the window because we're not taking that into account and we're only looking at players as a talent in their situations. Saquon Barkley should be a more highly drafted player than he is right now. Point blank, period.
100% agree.
Point blank, period.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
just he's somebody that if he fell to me in the third round, I'm never hesitating to make that pick. If he falls to me in the second round, I'm still probably not hesitating to make that pick at all.
Yeah. I think he's going to get a lot of hype based off of the preseason performance that he just had, and if he continues to play in the preseason, they're going to see how much usage he's going to get, and his ADP is going to go up. But I still think I'm going to be higher than market on him, regardless of where he ends up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem taking him in the back end of the first, man. I like him over guys like Najee Harris, Nick Chubb. Like he's got running back one potential, and people are treating it like he doesn't just because he's gotten hurt. I've been paying attention to what all the fantasy doctors have been saying about him. They all seem to be super confident in his recovery. He's 2 years removed from the ACL injury now. The high ankle sprain that he sustained was a total fluke injury, and he's fully recovered from that as well. I'm not worried about him from a health perspective. Getting into like what he did this weekend, he played all 12 snaps on the first drive with the first team offense, which is a great indication of a high snap share. He also touched the ball in 5 of those 12 plays. He had 4 rushes, 1 reception, and he ran 7 routes, a couple of them out wide. So that's really exciting to see. It looks like they're trying to get him out in space. Yeah, this is probably the best offensive line unit that he's ever played behind as well. I think all the arrows are pointing up for Saquon Barkley, and I'm ready to take him, a lot earlier than I think most people are going to this year.
Yeah, I agree. And then he should be, I think they already reported, like, this is the first time in a while that he has felt 100% healthy again. So it's it's exciting times. And then, leading the rest of or not leading the rest of the backfield, but just backing up Saquon Barkley, we got Matt Breida, who, if it was like 2016, 2017, I'd be excited about Matt Breida, but he's nothing really to be excited about anymore.
He's dust.
Yeah.
He is dust.
He's
Don't
gone.
worry about him.
He's gone. He's just a body.
Yeah. Gary Brightwell. Who is that? I don't know. Nobody cares, dude. It's Saquon all day.
Yeah.
Draft him.
Draft Saquon. Get him on your team. Fuck these other guys, dude. Like,
yeah.
Even if Saquon went down, I still probably wouldn't pick up Matt Breida. It would just be one of those, oh, yeah, this guy's going to get all this opportunity Saquon got. Oh, my God. And he's just not, because he's not Saquon Barkley. He's Matt Breida.
Yeah.
He's an aging Matt Breida. We kind of touched.
Sorry, Matt Breida, by the way. You're probably a good dude.
I know. If you're watching this, Matt Breida, I fuck with you, bro. You've won me a lot of fantasy games back in the past, and I appreciate you, but it's just, you know what you are now. Getting more into the wide receivers group, we touched on Kadarius Toney a good bit. The one I guess I want to talk about the most is Kenny Golladay and see what your outlook on him is, because he was a guy who people considered to be an elite wide receiver option with the Detroit Lions, but then he gets over here to the Giants and he's sort of disappeared. What do you feel about Kenny Golladay as a fantasy prospect?
I am also confused, to be honest with you. It's tough to really pin down what he's going to do. He's the highest paid of the wide receiver group by a good bit. They brought him in on a huge free agent contract. I think he's still talented, but he's also had trouble staying on the field. He's dealt with a multitude of injuries since he's gotten here. If he can stay healthy, he's really their only big body on the team. I guess they also brought in Colin Johnson, but he's kind of a lesser known guy. But Kadarius Toney, Wan'Dale Robinson, they're going to be more like gadget guys, or at least just like weapons that are used more in the intermediate game and stuff like that. Kenny Galladay is kind of the contested catch, red zone threat. So if he stays healthy in an offense that I think is going to take a big step up, he could be fine. But there's a lot of mouths to feed here, so I'm not putting my money on him by any means.
Yeah, for him to be a good fantasy option, you're kind of hoping for the stars to align.
Yeah,
And it's not one of those situations you can really feel confident in whatsoever. It's just, I want to say the talent is still there, but I really just don't know because he just hasn't really been on the field a whole lot. He hasn't really gotten a whole lot of looks on this team. It's weird. It's weird that they invested so much in him and they haven't used him, you know?
yeah, yeah. Wan'Dale Robinson is somebody that I wanted to touch on as well. He seems to have really cemented a good starting role on this team. He also played all of the 11 personnel snaps with the starters. So 11 personnel just being when there's three wide receivers on the field. He was on the field every time. He didn't see a target, but all of the reports that I've seen is that he's pretty much locked in as a starter in this offense. So, in case you were wondering about Sterling Shepard or I don't know,
Darius
Darius Slayton,
Slayton, the guy who's going
yeah,
below Odell in drafts right now.
Colin Johnson, any of those guys, I think Wandale has cemented himself. So that's good to see. And I'm pretty excited to see how they use him and Kadarius Toney, two pretty electric athletes out there on the field.
I agree. And then, I guess, just to lightly touch on the tight ends group, don't draft the Giants tight end.
Yeah.
Just don't do that. I don't know why you would even think about doing it, to be honest. But
Yeah.
don't.
Redraft wise, don't touch him. Don't even think about it. Just
Yeah.
like Will said. Daniel Bellinger is a rookie. He's been getting a lot of hype. There was a lot of Twitter love for him. So maybe a dynasty stash worth looking into. He's already pretty much cemented that starting role. I think he was also out there with the starters for the majority of snaps. But for 2022, don't even think about it.
Yeah, at least until you see it. Because I know they said that they were looking to play him in sort of like a Dawson Knox role, I believe is what
Okay.
someone had said, which even if that is true, I'm still not super excited about that either. So
Yeah.
it's Dawson Knox in a worse offense, and Dawson Knox wasn't super efficient. Oh well, he was very efficient, but he didn't have a lot of volume in a good offense. That was actually
Right.
thriving. So it's not
Right.
something that's moving the meter for me.
Totally agree. So I think that wraps up the NFC East for us. We can move on to the NFC West, which is definitely more high powered, potentially a little bit more interesting. We started off here with the 49ers and Trey Lance, who I just can't be higher on right now, dude. I am in love with the guy. I'm in love with him as a talent and what I think he can do for fantasy this year. I know, like I would just pounded the table for Saquon Barkley. I'm gonna do the same thing for Trey Lance. Please go watch our quarterback rankings video. I'm
Hmm.
moving him up from where I had him numbers wise in that video, but all of the same sentiments I still have. He's fucking amazing. He's gonna just crush this year in fantasy.
Oh yeah, and after that preseason performance, just seeing how comfortable he looked, it was a very different player from what we saw last
Yes.
year. There wasn't the whole, dancing eyes around the field. He was very
Yeah.
poised, made the right throws, it was everything that you wanted to see from Trey Lance in that game. But he threw what, four
Yeah.
for five, 4 for 5 and a touchdown.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe so. Yeah.
Let me see. Yeah, I think threw 4 for 5 and a touchdown. It's what you want to see. It's what you want to see out of your prospects. And he's moving up for me as well, especially because of that rushing upside that he has
Yeah.
in this offense too. And that was him playing without the number ones, even playing like Debo not on the field, Brandon Ayuk not on the field.
George Kittle not on the field.
Yeah, it's exactly what you want to see. And he did not look
Yeah.
like he's missed a beat.
Nope. No, he looks fantastic. And what do I have here? Stretch. Yeah. So eh, he showed like this offense was exciting with Kyle Shanahan because he's a great offensive mind, even when Jimmy was there. But now they have a guy that's athletic that can run the ball and can throw deep. He's got a cannon of an arm. Even if this is a roller coaster, even if he's inconsistent, which he will be, like I'm totally ready to admit that he's not going to be perfect all the way through. but it's just going to be so exciting to watch. He's going to be a highlight reel every time he's out there on the field. It's going to be amazing. He showed it with a deep bomb to I'm forgetting his name now. Danny Gray, the rookie Danny Gray.
Yep, Danny
He
Gray.
had a huge deep touchdown in that first preseason game. So yeah, just a lot more options for Kyle Shanahan to put in his toolbox.
It's Trey Lance season. Trey Lance
100%.
season.
So then
Uh,
we can get into the running back group. We talked about it at the top of the show. Elijah Mitchell dealing with a hamstring strain. From what I've heard, he's still, you know, clearly the RB1. I think they're ready to give him that opportunity again, but he has shown uh, issues with staying on the field health wise. Um, and as much as I don't want to buy into the narrative, it's hard not to at this point. The 49ers have just been a carousel of who their running back one has been every single year for the past, however long, I guess since Kyle has been there. Um, so it's a little hard to see Elijah Mitchell repeating, but I think he's definitely got the best shot, and he showed, good talent, good bursts, and fantasy upside last year.
no, that's agreed. He's an exciting player to watch. I actually
Yeah,
watched a lot of 49ers games last year, way more than Commanders. But Elijah Mitchell, he's a good player. Hopefully he's healthy. They're saying he's on pace to return week 1 and to play.
yeah,
I think if he is ready to go, he is the guy. Between him and like Jeff Wilson getting a little bit of burn, I'm not really worried about Trey Sermon at all. He's proven last year they aren't really excited about him. They kind of just picked him for running back depth. And Kyle Shanahan even said with like the running backs they picked this year, they were like, yeah, we kind of had to. I mean, you saw what happened last year. We had 5, 6 running backs on the roster and had to use every single one of them. So yeah, it's
yeah,
just if someone is the guy in this 49ers offense, I believe it just because Elijah Mitchell did get the burn he got last year. But when it comes to after that, if Elijah Mitchell goes down, we got no idea who's going to be playing next. I think they've proven that to us last year because nobody knew who Elijah Mitchell was until he's out there rushing for 100 yards a game, getting 20 plus carries a game, and it's like, who is this guy and why isn't Trey Sermon, the third round pick, playing? So they're
yeah.
Kyle Shanahan plays his guys. He likes his guys. I feel like.
Right. Yeah, the only thing that I would worry about is a little bit of a touchdown reduction for this running back group as a whole. Since Trey Lance is quarterback now, I think he's going to get a lot of usage
Hmm.
in short area red zone. He'll probably vulture a lot of rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, they had
Um,
designed run plays for Trey Lance as a backup last year, so I can't imagine what they have for him now as the starter.
yeah. So I think upside is a little bit capped there for Elijah Mitchell, and you also have the risk of injury. I, I don't think that he's going too high in drafts. I'm fine with his ADP right now, but he's still not really a target for me. Let me pull it up just so I can give you guys the numbers. Um, he is going as the running back 23, around the likes of like Travis Etienne, AJ Dillon, J.K. Dobbins. Uh, Travis Etienne, I'm a lot higher on, and I think we both are. But I think the rest of the names in that range are probably reasonable. J.K. Dobbins also with injury concerns coming off the ACL tear. A.J. Dillon has the upside if Aaron Jones go down, but he's sharing work, so I'm fine with where he's going.
Hmm.
He's just not like a smash play for me.
No, I agree. Like, there's definitely more exciting players than Elijah Mitchell, but I think he is a safe player. Barring all health conditions. I think Travis Etienne has that higher ceiling, but Elijah Mitchell kind of
Oh
has
yeah,
that safer floor, especially since he is in a good offense as well. But I do agree that Trey Lance is going to vulture some things from there. Also got Debo getting rushing attempts too. That's going to vulture a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. Looks
So
like he's going to continue as that wide back that they had him used as last year.
yeah, I guess that is a good segue into this wide receivers group with Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Juwan Jennings. Uh, Debo, he's a baller, dude. He's a hooper. He's gonna go out there and get his regardless of the situation. He's proven at this point he doesn't even need to play receiver to still be a good fantasy football wide receiver. So
Yeah,
to doubt Debo and his talent at this point is just kind of asinine. The team has shown what they want to do with him. They've shown that he can be efficient in doing it, and he can stay healthy for the most part while doing it. So
yeah,
he's just one of those guys. If he falls to you first round, well, not first round, but second round, third round, If he falls to you in the third round, that's an absolute smash. Second
No
round,
brainer.
he's a great pick.
Yeah.
The more interesting player out of this group, as we've kind of talked about before, Brandon Ayuk for me, just because I feel like he has worked with Trey Lance back when Brandon Ayuk was sort of in the doghouse last year. I know that those reports were coming out, so he wasn't really working with the ones a lot. He was actually working with Trey Lance a lot at practice.
Yeah.
So I think
Yep.
they do have that good working relationship, and that will show through on the field.
Yeah, I think you're still going to end up being higher on Ayuk for this year, for 2022, than I will be. Uh, I think that the passing volume is going to come down with Trey Lance. I don't worry about it as much with Debo Samuel, which I can get into. But I think the ancillary pieces, and I feel bad calling Brandon Ayuk an ancillary piece. He's a very talented guy, somebody that I believe in, and somebody that I'd probably want to invest in Dynasty. But until Trey Lance really develops as a passer and they start to open it up on that side, I just don't know that there's going to be too many targets to go around. But you're right; they have shown a lot of chemistry so far in training camp, and I guess not in the preseason because Ayuk didn't play, but they've looked good. Their chemistry has been there. So if you want to take a shot on him, I don't have any problem with that. I wanted to go back to Debo just real quick, pretty much echoing your sentiments, just really doubling down because I've seen a lot of Twitter hate for Debo and just pessimism based on the situation with Trey Lance. Uh, this man scored over 300 half PPR fantasy points last year. 300 points would have been good enough to tie him for wide receiver one overall last year with Devontae Adams and would have made him the wide receiver one by himself in every other year dating back to 2016. So, like, if he had finished as the overall wide receiver one, we'd be talking about him a lot differently coming into this season. It just so happened that Cooper Kupp put up literally the best fantasy wide receiver season we've ever seen. So he finished as a two. Um, so I have all the confidence in the world in Debo and that Kyle Shanahan is going to make sure to get his best playmaker the ball. So no worries there.
Yeah,
We can talk
hell,
about George Kittle. I know that you're pretty high on George Kittle. We talked about him in the tight ends video. So if you want a super in-depth breakdown on him, go check that out. But get a quick recap on your thoughts on George Kittle for this year.
I just love George Kittle because when he is on the field and when he is playing, he is either the best or one of the best tight ends in the league in terms of just receiving, in terms of volume. He's on the field almost every play because he's a great blocker. The only downside is because he's such a great blocker, he's a very physical player, which does lead to, you know, more chance of injury. But it's just the talent. You can't deny the talent at this point that George Kittle is. He's a beast. He's a monster. It's just a matter of if he can stay on the field, which I think we've only seen him stay healthy for one full season, maybe two.
Yeah, I don't have the
I believe his
numbers
breakout
in
year
front of
may
me.
have been the only one that he played a full season.
Yeah, he's definitely struggled to stay on the field. Health has been an issue for him.
But it's just he's undeniable as a talent when he is on the field. It's just the take that I'm coming from. And Trey Lance does like him as a target. It's been shown that he does throw him the ball. It's sort of that safety blanket, and it's a hell of a safety blanket to have.
Yeah. Yeah, you were right. 2018 season is the only season that he's played all 16 games.
Mm-hmm.
He's missed quite a few the past 3 years.
Yeah, I
But I
remember.
think, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I remember that next year that I drafted him and he played like maybe 4 games.
Yeah. Um, his ADP is wide receiver four. I believe in the tight end rankings, I had him at five, but with this Darren Waller news about him having a hamstring strain or whatever, staying out of training camp, that worries me a little bit. So I'm totally fine with him at his ADP. Um, I think depending on what round he ends up falling to, if it's like fourth or fifth, then he could even be a value. So I'm totally fine with being on board with George Kittle this year.
Let's go. Stonks are up.
Hell yeah. So let's move on to the Cardinals, starting it with Kyler Murray at the quarterback position. I think, we've talked about him a couple different times in different videos and how we feel about him just, as not necessarily as a passer or as a talent, but as a quarterback and a leader. Uh, we're not super happy with like what he's displayed from like a body language perspective, from a leadership perspective, but from a fantasy scoring perspective, he's been fantastic. Another guy that we talked about in depth in our quarterback rankings video, if you want to go check that out. He typically starts off hot, and then the past 2 years, he's sustained some injury kind of midway through the season that slowed him down. But I believe both years, last year and the year before, he was around that quarterback one or like just below quarterback one in points per game or sustaining an injury. So if he can stay healthy for a full season, there's no reason he can't finish as the quarterback one.
Yeah, that's just to reiterate like what you said. Any doubts that I have ever had, or even Eric has ever had about Kyler Murray, has never been from a fantasy or talent perspective whatsoever. He's a top end fantasy option at quarterback. He's a top end player. He's just a little bitch. That's it. So, Kyler, if you see this, I apologize. You gotta fix some stuff, man. You just gotta, if you're gonna be a franchise quarterback, you gotta be willing to take the good with the bad. Like if you're gonna get all the praise, you gotta be able to take the blame as well because you are that franchise quarterback. But from a fantasy and talent perspective, it just about doesn't get too much better than Kyler Murray, especially when he's on. Because when he's on, he has that quarterback one ability and potential. He gets a lot of
Yeah.
red zone rushes, at least before he gets hurt. Eventually, throughout the season, he gets a lot of red zone rushes. He vultures a lot of those from the running back group. But Kyler Murray is a talent. Everything is there that you could ever ask for in a quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. He's somebody that I think is falling a little bit too late in drafts so far this year. It's still a little early for me to invest in the quarterback position. That's another thing that we've talked about plenty, just our strategy as far as not typically drafting them early. But he's going as like the overall 60th player off the board according to Fantasy Pros, which I think is very good value for him. So if you're looking to get a quarterback early, he's definitely somebody worth targeting.
Mm-hmm.
We can get into this running back group. James Conner had a phenomenal year last year. From like a rushing efficiency numbers standpoint, it was
Mm-hmm.
actually quite the opposite. He was super inefficient. It was one of the worst, just like statistical performances of his career. But the opportunity was there, especially when Chase Edmonds went down. His rushing numbers and receiving numbers took a huge jump up. And now Chase Edmonds is gone. He's on the Dolphins. And I don't see Benjamin or Darrell Williams, who they just brought in, as anywhere close to Chase Edmonds level talents.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, voice is cracking on me, but
No worries.
I'm a little bit worried about Connor from a health perspective, and also he scored 15 rushing touchdowns last year, and I don't see that repeating. Especially if Kyler gets more involved in the rushing game like he had been the year prior. So I see his numbers dipping, but if he still is going in the third and fourth round of drafts, I'm
Mm-hmm.
willing to buy in there.
Yeah, James Conner was one of those players for me that was rated entirely too high after the end of last season. And it's sort of people of expectations have met reality now, where I think he's going as like the consensus like 15, RB 15, which I feel like is fair. He's going around people like David Montgomery and Ezekiel Elliott, which well not Ezekiel Elliott, he should be higher than he is, but he's Leonard
They are going
Fournette.
in a similar range, though. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're going back to back, 16, 17.
yeah, so they're all right there. So like if you were to pick any of those running backs in that range, I'm not mad at it, but I do think he's not going to have as much touchdown luck as he had last year. I think Kyler being healthy for a bigger percentage of the season is going to help also hurt not help hurt James Conner's numbers in terms of touchdown luck. But it's
Yep.
just he's interesting, man. I don't think he's really been that same running back ever since that first year at the Steelers where he got that opportunity to play. But he's still a solid option in fantasy. It's just a matter of he's going to be very touchdown dependent because he's not very efficient anymore. He's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be very touchdown dependent. So if you're cool with
Yeah.
that in a running back and you're cool with taking that chance, he's going in a good range for it, but it's not something to be super confident in.
Yeah. I think he's a high upside, low floor play,
Mm-hmm.
and reasonably priced where he's going. So if that's a risk that you're willing to take, I think that's a decent bet. Um, Apologies to our viewers right now. My computer is dying. I'm gonna have to switch over, so my eyes might be looking at a different place. But if you want to transition us to our wide receiver group,
Yep.
I'm still listening to you.
So we're gonna go ahead and get into this wide receiver group that, to start the season, is led by Marquise Brown. As you know, they have D Hop, but he's coming off a 6 game suspension for using PEDs, which he claims isn't the case. But I believe that he didn't think that he was using PEDs. I think that sometimes when you're using supplements and you are a professional athlete, every once in a while you do end up getting something that isn't the most legitimate, or something that's even in testing that could be found after the fact to be illegal. So they're not going to have DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 weeks. So Marquise Brown is going to be leading this wide receiver group with this, and that's a former teammate of Kyler Murray. So that was something that we were kind of talking about in prior episodes, with just that quarterback college connection, which is something that I feel like is going to play a factor. They're very familiar with one another. You got receivers like Rondale Moore and AJ Green. AJ Green is aging. He was wildly he was wildly relevant last year for some reason. I don't really understand it
Yeah.
myself, but I think that's going to take a step back this year, especially since Rondale Moore is starting to emerge more, and they have Marquise Brown now. Once they get this full wide receiver room, it should be the three of them with a sprinkle of AJ Green, but you never really know. Marquise Brown, out of all of these, is maybe the most boom or bust option. I think he's going to be very good, but I don't know how good for where he's going. But D Hop is definitely going to be the alpha dog on that team once he comes back. So, Eric, if you have more thoughts on that to share, because I honestly don't know what to make heads or tails of this room as a whole as to who is the best pick.
I I'm really high on Hollywood this year.
Okay.
Maybe that's a little bit foolish on my part. Maybe I'm buying too much into the hype, but just for the price for where he's going right now, he's definitely somebody that I'm targeting in drafts. He's going behind Brandon Cooks, Darnell Mooney, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin. Uh, I think I'd take him over all of those guys, at least for that hot start. I really value that hot start to the season. He's going to have the first 6 games without DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to be operating as the wide receiver one. I think he's a clear fit and something that this offense has been missing, that kind of speedster downfield threat, but also kind of that elusive guy in the underneath mesh game, which is really like the crux of Kingsbury's spread offense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he fits in really well there, and like you touched on, the chemistry with Kyler Murray is already there. So
I think
I'm higher on him than most.
I think it's also important to doubt that, or not doubt, to say that even though I have doubts, Marquise Brown has shown last year that he can be an elite fantasy option,
Yeah,
and that was on a technically a run heavy team, especially at the start of the season when he was really booming and doing what he was doing. It was when it was still a run heavy team and they weren't going through the carousel that they were towards the end of the season.
yeah. Prior to Lamar Jackson getting hurt, he was a target monster. He was a really consistent fantasy option. Even with Lamar Jackson going down, I think he still ended with over 140 targets on the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just think he's going to have a really hot start. Even if he cools down near the end, I think it's going to be worth it where he's going price wise, ADP wise for that first 6 or 7 games of the season. Um, to get into the other wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, like you said, he's probably going to go down as one of the better receivers of all time. He's just so good. He is aging out a little bit. He has been dealing with some injuries later on into his career.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hopeful that he comes back and is his old self, but it's possible that he's starting to slow down, which might mean even more positive things for Hollywood. But behind the two of them, it's hard for me to really say. Like Rondell Moore kind of had a dud of a rookie season,
Mm-hmm.
had a couple splash plays, but that was it. His A dot, his average depth of target, was negative for the season, which I thought
Jesus.
was hilarious.
Jesus.
Yeah, so he's really just been used as a gadget guy so far in his career. AJ Green is just old and slow, but might still be just a more complete wide receiver than Rondell Moore at this point in his career. So I could see him being involved. There's been some hype about a guy. I think his name is like Greg Dortch or something, coming from training camp. I'm not suggesting that you draft him or anything like that, but he might mix in as the third receiver option or something like that prior to DeAndre Hopkins returning from his suspension. Um, so that's kind of my take on the receiver room.
Yeah, it's just after Marquise and after D Hop, it's just It's not a whole lot to be excited about, but they very well could prove to be somewhat of fantasy options just because of how high powered this offense is and how much they do like to throw the ball.
That's
So
true.
so it's something to keep an eye on, but as for those two, they're no one I'm drafting, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
I think that transitions us well over into the tight end position. Another guy that we spoke highly of in our tight end rankings is Zach Ertz. I think he's going to be leaned on really heavily while DeAndre Hopkins is out as more of that kind of possession, big body guy.
Mm-hmm.
Since most of the guys, talking about Hollywood, Rondell Moore, they're smaller, maybe less dependable contested catch guys. Um, he had a fantastic end of season last year after he got traded to the Cardinals. I don't have the numbers pulled up in front of me, but I think he had the second most targets from the tight end position from the point that he was traded until the end of the season. So he was super involved, and with DeAndre Hopkins out, that's only going to continue. So I really like him in redraft this year, even if it is only a hot start, like I said with Marcus Brown.
To say, and even just to add on to the Zach Ertz hype, because I wasn't as high on him until we had actually spoken about him and you had broken more down for me. But I was looking into him more, and apparently last year during the stretch of 4 games where D Hop was hurt, I think Zach Ertz finishes the tight end 4
Yeah,
during those weeks. Yeah, tight end 4 over that stretch, and he averaged 7 receptions per game with a 24% target share. Which,
that's huge.
if we're
24%.
if we're getting that for 6 games to start out the season, that's a
Yeah,
great value. That's an amazing value.
yeah. And the thing is, I'm pulling it up right now. He's going really late. He's going as the tight end 9 off the board, almost like around pick 100, I believe. So I wouldn't even mind, it's not really punting the position, but like waiting if you're not going to get those premium options at the top and taking Zach Ertz as a high end option, at least for the first 7 weeks. And then if he continues on a similar pace, then just ride it out. If not, you can stream the position um, with guys afterwards. So that's probably a strategy I'm going to be implementing in a lot of my drafts.
Yeah, it's a good strategy because that first 6 weeks should be crazy. And if you can get that positional advantage at tight end, especially weeks 1 through 6, you're setting yourself up for a good entry into the second half of the season in fantasy. Very good
100%.
entry.
And then just one more name to touch on. They also drafted the tight end Trey McBride, I believe, in the second round, maybe the third round, but they gave him pretty high draft capital. Pretty talented prospect coming out of Colorado State, I believe. He's a guy to keep an eye on for dynasty purposes. Somebody that you might want to target if you're, have an aging tight end in your tight end dynasty slot. So interesting longer term option, but Zach Ertz is definitely the guy to go to this year.
Yeah, Trey McBride, very interesting dynasty prospect. Also, 2020 had a 71% dominator rating in terms of just receptions and touchdowns. So he is one of those guys that he puts up numbers.
Yeah.
He fits the profile.
Yeah. We'll see if he ends up getting involved at all this season. But I think that probably wraps up our Cardinals talk. We can move on to the Rams with Matthew Stafford, another guy that we talked about a little bit in our quarterback rankings. He's also had some injury news kind of floating around about his elbow. They're calling it like a baseball injury and saying that maybe he's got tendonitis. It's been labeled as a bunch of different things so far, but he's kind of managing it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think he was managing it for most of last season as well. So maybe it's not something that we should be too concerned about, but definitely something I have on my radar right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that. He's already been a full participant in practice this week, and they hope to continue to have him as a full participant. He's also one of those warriors in the NFL who kind of plays through just about anything.
Yeah.
So I don't see this holding him back from playing. It's just a matter if it holds him back from being effective, and that's yet to be seen. But he's still, I think, I was pretty high on him in our quarterback rankings, and I still am pretty high on him. I think he's got all the opportunity in the world, and he's got a great set of weapons with him. So it all just remains to be seen. But think I don't think the elbow is going to be too much of an issue. I think it's just people find an injury and they just want to, talk about it, especially when it has to do with the throwing arm. It's gonna be talked about all the time. So people are gonna be lower on him. It's gonna gradually keep coming down, and that's okay because it's gonna make more Matt Stafford more of a potential value in fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that take. I was a little bit lower on him than you were in our quarterback rankings, but I can see the upside there. And especially, like you said, if his ADP falls, then I think that turns him into a value. A little bit of breaking news, not super crazy, but Chris Godwin just took his first 7-on-7 reps. I think he had only been working in individual drills to this point, so he finally got in on some team drills. They're saying he looked smooth in and out of cuts and stuff like that. So positive news to hear from Chris Godwin. Um,
Mm.
but we can get into the running back room for the Rams. We mentioned at the top of the show that Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson are both dealing with soft tissue injuries and are not participating at this moment, and that they've been splitting reps evenly throughout training camp. I think for me, it means that Darrell Henderson is probably a value with how late he's going in drafts because I believe in him as a talent. I think he's shown nothing but good things when he's been on the field. He has the ability as a pass catcher. He's been a really efficient runner. He's a little bit on the smaller side and has dealt with some injuries. Um, but yeah, if Cam Akers isn't the same off of this Achilles tear still and is already splitting reps with Darrell Henderson, I think that bumps him down quite a bit.
No, that's facts. It's just this is very much a situation where it looks like it's gonna just end up getting cut down the middle. If there was a player that I had to say I like more on a potential aspect, it would be Cam Akers. But even still, we haven't seen him return to that same form he had his rookie year because he is coming off that Achilles injury. Darrell Henderson also very injury prone. It's a strange situation for this Rams running back group. I just imagine it as just Rams running back one, Rams running back two, and they're essentially the same player to me right now until they prove otherwise. So, in terms of drafts, unless I get them late, they're not really anyone I'm targeting. Like you said, Darrell Henderson more of a value because he is going later than Cam Akers. He doesn't have that, name recognition. But when Darrell Henderson did play last year, he was very effective as well. So it's just, I think
Yeah.
this is going to just be a very balanced group.
Yeah. And I think I agree with you. It's a little bit weird to say, considering that McVay has typically gone with like
A
a
bell
workhorse
cow.
approach at running back. Yeah, a bell cow, giving one guy the majority of the work. But all indications so far have been that they're going to a committee this year. We'll see if that ends up being the case. I think you're definitely right. I liked Cam Akers a lot as a prospect, as an athlete. If he does get back that same burst and athleticism that he had prior to the Achilles injury, he's definitely the higher upside player. But put some respect on Darrell Henderson. He's
Mm-hmm.
played phenomenally when he's been in. So we don't have to continue to repeat ourselves. I think this is going to be a split. And I think Darrell Henderson is probably worth targeting if he ends up going, ninth, 10th, 11th round. That's definitely someone I want to grab up on my team.
Absolutely agree with the sentiment. Absolutely. And then we're getting into the wide receiver group, which is probably one of the more exciting parts of this. We got Cooper Cup, the God. Cooper Cup,
Always,
the
always the
God.
god.
Triple Crown winner. If you if you don't think Cooper Cup's good, you're a fucking idiot. You're brain dead. I will tell you that right now. If you don't think he's good, you're stupid. Cooper Cup has been good since he's entered the league. This is just the first year that he's really going into it with superstar status. But he's had years, like I believe the year that he tore his ACL, he was on a monster pace that year where he may have been a cripple crown, a triple crown winner, a triple crown winner that year. But it's just
Mm-hmm.
he's always had that potential. He's smart as hell. You know he knows his playbook. Listening to him talk football is one of the most enjoyable experiences ever, especially if you're
Yeah,
anything familiar with just how wide receivers play. There's so much knowledge. He is one of the prototypical wide receivers. He's not the fastest, not the biggest, not the strongest, but he makes up for that with just his depth of knowledge, his technique. He is that guy, and he's proven it that he's that guy. He's a Super Bowl
yeah,
MVP at wide receiver. He should have been league MVP if you ask me. But
definitely a good argument for it.
yeah, So Cooper Cup, there's just no argument. If you can draft him if where he's falling at, I wouldn't use a top 5 pick on him just because I don't do that with wide receivers. But if you're drafting him second half of the first round because he's going to be gone by then, it's a great pickup. It's an excellent pickup.
Yeah, I definitely still have him as wide receiver one coming into this year. I think there's a decent argument to be made for Justin Jefferson, especially with Kevin O'Connell moving from the Rams over to the Vikings and talking about how he's going to be used in the Cooper Cup role. But
See, but
I'm still gonna.
Justin Jefferson ain't Cooper Cup. That's the thing, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, I have him pretty much back to back, and I wouldn't mind, if somebody were to take one over the other. But currently, I have Cooper Cup as my wide receiver one. I'm typically with you, where I don't like to invest in wide receivers early, especially in that top half of the draft. But man, I'm leaning more and more towards it with guys like Cooper Cup, Justin Jefferson. If you can get him in that like 5, 6, 7 range, that's where I'd be more comfortable. It's tough for me to do it in like the 3, 4, 5 when there's still some of those juicy running backs at the top. But definitely something to consider if you're into those wide receiver heavy builds. Um, but I don't think we need to take too much more time on Cooper Cup. He's just a dog. He's going to do great again this season. The interesting one is Allen Robinson. He comes over from Chicago, gets a lot of money. And there was some doubt about whether Allen Robinson was washed. I think it was more so that he just hated the situation that he was in, hated the coaching staff and their lack of belief in him. And he just didn't really want to play football for the Bears anymore, which is why he didn't look as good. Looking deeper into the numbers, another reference to reception perception, he showed that he's still the same old Allen Robinson as far as separation and getting open versus different coverages. So I'm not worried that he's washed. I think I'm pretty high on him this year and above consensus or above ADP when it comes to A-Rod.
Yeah, I like to think about Allen Robinson as he's going to be in that Robert Woods slash Odell Beckham position, in terms of start of the season, end of the season. They were both pretty much in that same role. And he's younger than both of them still. Like Allen Robinson's only 28. Odell's turning 30 this year. Robert Woods already 30. It's just, he's got all the opportunity right here, and I think he's going to seize it. It's like you said, he just hasn't been in a good situation for the last 3, 4 years since he's been with the Bears. Yeah. And on top of that, it's just, I'm losing my train of thought here. Fuck, god damn it. But Allen Robinson, he's still a great player. Honestly, he's got great opportunity. I like to think of it as how, like, Odell, people thought he was washed up until he got into a better situation, and then it was like, oh no, Odell's still Odell. I think this is very much going to be Allen Robinson is still Allen Robinson type of situation.
Yeah, totally agree with you. All of the reports out of training camp have been super positive. They're saying that he's being used as a red zone weapon, that he's looked really crispy coming in and out of routes, that he's just performing really, really well and has established rapport with Matt Stafford already. So I really like him this season. They got Van Jefferson as their wide receiver 3, who did he already have surgery?
Yes.
With that? Okay. He's had surgery already.
Minor knee surgery. They said coming, and I think it was a quote that Sean McVay had. He was like upset about him getting hurt because he was like, damn, he was coming off his best practice as a Ram yet, and now he gets hurt.
Yeah.
Which I don't really know what that means, but just something to say.
Yeah, true. Coach speak.
Yeah.
But if they stay as pass heavy as they were last season, Van Jefferson is going to be at least a little bit fantasy relevant. He's probably somebody I'd be more interested in a best ball format where you don't have to actually manage the roster and make sit-start decisions because you don't know when he's going to pop off, but he'll probably have some deep touchdowns a few weeks out of the year. But he's not going to crack that top 2 with Cooper Cup and A-Rod. Mm-hmm. Maybe a late round flyer. I wouldn't mind that in fantasy drafts, but not somebody I'm super hyped on.
And then the Rams, I don't know if the Rams are. I know there have been talks, but I know Cooper Cup, I just saw an interview that he had on I Am Athlete with Brandon Marshall. And Brandon Marshall asked him, like, hey, is Odell coming back? And he's like, man, I want him back, bro. We're trying. So
yeah,
Odell could also return back to this group, which would be probably a hit to anybody, to Van Jefferson in terms of him getting on the field. But That
Yeah.
would be a crazy wide receiver room. I don't see that hurting Cooper Cup at all because he's just proven he's getting what he's going to get. Maybe Allen
Gotcha.
Robinson takes a dip, but by that point in the season, it's not really anything really to worry about because we don't know when Odell is going to come back. So,
Yeah. I've also heard rumors that Von Miller and Stephon Diggs have been trying to recruit him to Buffalo.
mm,
Um, but we'll see. This is all just speculation and literally them tweeting at him. So we have no idea what the front offices are thinking.
yeah,
Um,
we're talking
but
about a guy who's
that,
sitting at home on his couch with a leg brace on. So,
yeah, yeah. And honestly, like you said, based on that injury, he probably wouldn't be relevant until much later on in the season because he's not fully recovered right now. So,
yeah,
um, and then we got Tyler Higbee at tight end for the Rams. Somebody who's showed flashes. He's a talented guy, but there's just so many mouths to feed and probably more talent in front of him. He's going to be used, or he's going to be on the field a lot because he's their clear number one tight end. But I don't know how many opportunities he's going to get.
yeah. Tyler Higbee to me is like essentially the same player as like Gerald Everett. And it's funny because they were both in this situation. They were both on this team. So maybe now
Yeah,
that they're both at separate places, they'll both do better, might flourish a little bit more. But it's just nobody that I'm super confident that they're going to get a lot of targets. Like the Rams don't target the tight end position a lot. I've never really known a relevant Rams tight end to this point. So it's just he's a guy that you could stream. He's someone that you could throw him in there if you don't have any other options, and you could feel pretty comfortable with it. But not somebody that I would want on a week to week as my starting tight end in fantasy.
yep. I'm with you on that.
Great hair though. Great
Uh,
hair.
Dude, fantastic flow. Pretty jealous. So that wraps up the Rams, and we get into our final team of this divisional breakdown with the Seahawks. Um, a lot to get into here. A lot of interesting kind of positional battles. We got Geno Smith and Drew Lock fighting for that QB1 position. I don't know if that's exciting
I was
because
gonna
neither
say
of them are very
exciting.
good, but
Exciting is a weird word for it, but I'll go with it.
maybe the wrong vocab word there. Probably should have picked something better. But all of the reports that I've seen so far are saying that Geno Smith has been leading the way. Um, he looked not terrible in the time that he was filling in for Russell Wilson last year. That might be putting it too nicely. Drew
Yeah,
Lock also looked really rough for the Broncos though.
yeah. To say that Geno Smith has been leading the way isn't really as much news as it would be if like Drew Lock was. Because Geno Smith
Yeah,
has been here for a year. He's familiar with it. He started games last year while Russell Wilson was out. If Drew Lock were to come in and just usurp him, it would just mean Geno Smith is garbage. He's
yeah,
trash. So it's just Geno Smith isn't garbage, is what that news means to me, at least.
yeah. Yeah, I think if Drew Lock were to have been named the starter already, then that's probably a better bet for him to stay that for the remainder of the season. He's just younger. He's probably got more arm talent, more upside.
Hmm.
But the fact that Geno Smith has been named the starter, like you said, he's been around, he knows the playbook. I
Yeah,
wouldn't be surprised if they have a QB switch midway through the season.
yeah, I agree with that sentiment. It's just he's the guy right now because he knows the system and he hasn't gotten his jaw broken at this team, so I'd assume he gets along well with the players. So it's just yeah, it is what it is. Geno Smith's there. He's a guy.
He's a guy. Um, I'm looking up ADP right now, trying to see where Ken Walker is going. It looks like he's going as running back 36 off the board. So I bring that up because Rashad Penny is the clear starter. They've said that from the beginning, ever since they drafted Rashad Penny, or sorry, Kenneth Walker,
Hmm.
that Rashad's the guy. He had just a fantastic end of the season last year, that 6 game stretch where he was the overall RB1 during that time. It was really cool to see him back healthy and, really performing in a way that I think a lot of people expected him to when he came into the NFL. Like we said at the top of the show, he's currently dealing with a groin issue. Hopefully, fingers crossed, he can stay healthy because I think he does really have a lot of upside.
Hmm.
Um, but Kenneth Walker had been getting drafted too high after the NFL draft. His ADP has dropped pretty considerably. He's now, like I said, running back 36, going in that like Melvin Gordon, Michael Carter range. I think he might have switched from like overvalued to undervalued, where if Rashad Penny were to go down, he steps into a clear, RB1 role.
No, I 100% agree with that. If Rashad Penny goes down, Ken Walker is the next guy up, and he's getting every touch. It's a Pete Carroll offense. He likes to run through one running back, almost stubbornly so. He loves injury-prone running backs, so I'm sure he's going to start Rashad Penny in any situation he can.
Yeah.
It's it's one of those situations, like you said, Ken Walker is going a lot lower than he should. I think he is still going to get play. Rashad Penny hasn't proven to be much of a receiving back, so Ken Walker is probably going to get a lot of those third down looks as well, in terms of just change of pace.
I don't I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I think he might be capable of it, but they've said so far in training camp that they don't love where he's at as a pass blocker,
Ah,
and they do like Travis Homer's ability as a pass catcher. So I don't know that he's got that third down role locked up right now,
okay.
but there's potential there.
There's potential. I don't like Travis Homer. I just
No,
no. He's just
yeah,
it's just me having a lot more, I guess, optimism for Ken Walker and pessimism for Travis Homer. I'm hoping that they don't do that,
yeah,
but he also does need to improve as a pass blocker if he wants to stay on the field more. So I see the sentiment there. I see what they're going
yeah,
for. But if there's
yeah.
anybody out of these guys I'm taking, it's Rashad Penny if I can get him. But I don't know. After last year, I'm still kind of scarred, man.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, but I think both of these guys are actually values where they're going.
Hmm.
It's worth mentioning, we've talked about all the positives. The Seahawks are not going to be good.
No.
They're going to be bad.
Yep.
Quarterback's bad. Offensive line's bad.
Yep.
It's going to be a rough go of it for this team.
Yep.
But when you can get an RB1 for a team, especially somebody as talented as Rashad Penny or even Kenneth Walker, who has shown in the preseason and through his college career that he's a fantastic running back, all the way down, in the eighth, ninth, 10th round, I think, why not pull the trigger? Like the upside is worth it, even if the floor is nothing to me.
No, agreed. And then when Rashad Penny has played, also he has been very, very, very good
Yeah.
across the board. Even like his second year when him and Chris Carson were kind of going back and forth. They were both starting and both playing. They were both super effective. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of availability there. But it's just at the rate that they're going, at the ADP that they're going for, they're both, like you said, they're great values.
Yeah.
Because Rashad Penny, in a weird way, does have like RB1 upside. He really does.
Somehow.
Somehow.
Yeah. It's crazy. So that can lead us into their wide receiver room. Still got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Still both super talented, rising in the DK side. Tyler Lockett's still very consistent, really good route runner. Um, Obviously, quarterback situation gives them a huge disadvantage from where they were at with Russell Wilson. I think that they're being a little bit too disrespected ADP wise. I think they're going a little too late. I get it. They're not going to be consistent. It's not going to be pretty every game, but they're just too talented. And like, where else are they going to go with the ball?
Yeah, that's fair. It's a weird thing because this team is going to be as bad as it is, but in that sort of, team being as bad as it is, you sort of get a weird level of consistency with that. Because with the team being as bad as it is, you know who the alphas are on the team, so you know who the ball is going to go to.
Yeah,
So these two guys,
garbage time and
yeah, they're going to get played. This team is going to have to throw the ball a lot because I don't see them in the lead very often.
yeah,
So it's just, yeah, I like to think of DK Metcalf as essentially Allen Robinson back when he was on the Jaguars going into this year.
yeah,
It's going to be some garbage time points, but points are points. It doesn't matter when you get them in fantasy. So you always take your points.
for sure. Yeah, he's going as the wide receiver 19. DK is. I guess that's a reasonable value around guys like Darnell Mooney and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I think are going to probably be more consistent, even if they don't have quite the same upside. So maybe I'm being a little too optimistic calling him a value, but I don't mind him at his current ADP. Tyler Lockett's going pretty late, though. Let me see if I can find him.
So I've got Tyler Lockett listed as,
37.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah, consensus 37.
Yeah, he's going around like Traylon Burks, Brandon Ayuk, Robert Woods. I think he deserves to be a little bit higher than that. But again, maybe I'm being too optimistic here. This is going to be a bad offense. And if you're into consistency at the position, which is tough to find from any wide receiver, but this is certainly not the place to look. So if you're more into consistency as opposed to boom bust, then you probably want to avoid these guys.
Yeah, and then after those two, you got Freddie Swain, who I remember him just being that guy that would piss me off on a week to week basis because Russell Wilson was, again, he was so good that you never really had an alpha receiver like you did, like you knew who was good, but at the same time,
Yeah.
he was the type of guy who could get the ball out there to anybody. And
Yeah.
Freddie Swain was one of those guys. I see that coming down severely this year. I don't know if that's going
Yeah.
to continue to be the thing, if he's going to continue to be even somewhat of a thing.
Probably not. With the lack of volume and the lack of talent at the quarterback position, I don't think he's going to be worth rostering really anywhere. We can get to the tight end position. Noah Fant does come over in trade, came along with Drew Lock. Somebody that I think a lot of people have been hoping for more from him ever since he stepped on the fields in the NFL. Super athletic, super talented. You could debate whether it's a lack of opportunity or whether he's good enough, but if
Hey,
Drew Lock gets named the starting quarterback, like there is some chemistry there. Maybe there's reason to think there's upside. I don't know. What are your thoughts here?
my thoughts is that Noah Fant's always been kind of weird to me because he was out of Iowa, right, with T.J. Hawkinson, but he was actually
Yes.
considered more of the receiving tight end than T.J. Hawkinson was, and it's we've seen
Right.
nothing but the opposite since they've gotten into the league.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I've been every year I've gotten lower and lower on Noah Fant, and I don't really see him being super relevant on this bad team, especially if they are as bad as they are. They'll probably want someone in there who is more capable of blocking and being that guy who can give defenses more than one look besides I'm gonna go receive, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not super high on Noah Fant. He has the potential, but again, like you said, he has the potential every year. So we're still just waiting on something to happen.
Yeah.
And as for
Yeah. They,
Will Disley has been just an annoying player in fantasy forever, but
yeah.
he's familiar with the system. He blocks well. He's going to get a lot more opportunity to be on the field. So
Yeah. I don't know that there's even really much more to be said about the tight end group. There's just not a ton of upside to be had, and probably not a very high floor either. If we're targeting anybody, it's those running backs. Pete Carroll loves to go run heavy. We'll see if he's even capable of doing that, considering they're going to be in such negative game scripts. But Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker, I think, are probably values where they're going right now. The rest is kind of a crapshoot with this crazy Seattle offense.
yeah, but I will say if you want to take a late round flyer on Noah Fant just to have him on your team just to see what happens, I'm not mad at it because the potential is there. We just don't know if he can do it. He's 24 years old. He's in a new situation. We'll see what happens, but I'm not super confident in that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that wraps up our divisional breakdown. That was the NFC East and NFC West. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we start to wrap up here, Will?
Nothing much. Just make sure you guys are keeping an eye on these preseason games if you want to get a better outlook on how these teams are going to use these players because they're not going to lie to you because they really are trying to get looks at how these situations and players are going to look in these situations. So
Right.
take what they give you at face value. Hopefully, if the Eagles do play AJ Brown again, he actually does get to play.
Yeah.
But that's all. It all remains to be seen. But if they show you something, I would err on the side of believing it instead of trying to create your own narrative as to what you think a player is going to do based on their potential. Because someone very well could be a better player in the NFL that's getting started over by someone else. But you got to believe these coaches. You got to believe their schemes.
Yeah, just to add on to that, the you don't necessarily want to pay attention to the box score. You want to pay attention to who's getting reps with the first team when the starting quarterback is on the field. That's going to be the most important piece of information you can take away from these preseason games, and I think it's super valuable for you projecting who's going to be the starters coming into 2022. Um, so I think that wraps us up. thank you for sticking with us. I know that these divisional breakdowns are long videos, but we're trying to get through a bunch of divisions at a time before the start of the season. So thank you for being with us for that. Check out our Discord. Come talk to us, be in the community, comment on this video, tell us why we're dumb, tell us why we're smart, what you agree with, disagree with. That would be much appreciated. We love you out there. Please like the video. That would be fantastic. That's always good for us in the algorithm. And subscribe so you can see even more of the videos that we have coming out. We do have a running back rankings video coming up probably later this week. So join us for that. And yeah, thanks for sticking with us. Will, you got anything else to say?
Nah, man. If you watch this long, bro, I fuck with you, bro. You're tight. And if you didn't make it this far, you're not even hearing this. So I don't even know why I said that sentence. So we can go on and get up on out of here. Y'all enjoy your day. Y'all be blessed. And yeah.
Peace.
Peace.